Councillor Williston, and then you're speaking as ward member tonight. Sorry about that, Councillor Williston. Well, good evening and welcome to every one of you. I'm Phil Barnett, the Chairman of Western Area Planning Committee. Other members of the committee joining me this evening are, from the left onwards, Councillor Abbs, Councillor Dick, the Vice Chairman, Councillor Hooker. On to my right, Councillor Foote, Councillor Coulson, who is substituting for Councillor Gaines, and Councillor Amos-Raj and Councillor Vickers. The following officers are attending to advise and support the meeting. In fact, we've got an array of officers, I might add, tonight. To my right, we've got the Development Manager, Bob Dray, and we've got various Pauls on the rear row. We've obviously got Paul Goddard, Team Leader, Highways Development Control, Alistair Buckley, Senior Minerals and Waste Officer. Welcome to probably your first meeting, I suspect, is that correct? Okay. Matthew Shepherd, Principal Planning Officer, and Elise Kinderman, Place Team Manager. I'm not certain whether this is your first Western Area, is it? Okay. Paul Backus, Principal Engineer on the rear row, along with Russell Davison, Senior Scientific Environmental Health Officer. And I'm not certain whether you've actually attended a Western Area before, have you? Okay, welcome to you. And to my left, I've got Nicola Thomas, Service Lead in Legal and Democratic Services. To the rear, the clerk, Jess Bayliss, and to my rear, I'm not certain where he is, Thomas Radburn is the Zoom host. Before we start this evening's meeting, I would like to take the opportunity to remind members that we are subject to the Council's Code of Conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards, including, importantly, respect. Members across the chamber might not always agree with one another, but I would ask that in our disagreements, we endeavour to always be respectful of others' views. Bearing in mind that there's probably many of the members of the public are not totally aware of the layout of the building, I will actually make sure that I repeat the evacuation procedure. If we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via a safe emergency exit, which is above the door to the left and obviously to the right where you came in, and exit the route, and please follow any instructions given by officers. The assembly point is in the car park and the Dolphin Pub, which I would hope many of you know exactly where the Dolphin Pub is, the other side of the car park. But if a lockdown alarm sounds, we will remain seated and await instruction from officers. We will then adjourn the meeting and such a time it is safe to proceed. Do members have any questions about the way this meeting is to be conducted before I proceed? No. Yes, okay.
There are a lot of extra members of the public outside and watching out there. We seem to have some spare desks. I wonder whether they could come in.
We are subject to a certain numbers for fire regulations, and I'm just going to ask the clerk perhaps just to reiterate the position. Jess?
Yeah, so it's 24 to 26 in the public seating area, and that's the maximum for the chamber.
I believe they are for the next item anyway. Or somewhere. Okay.
Okay. Thanks for pointing that out, Councillor Williston. Now, I'm going to make, sorry, can we just hold one meeting, please? I don't like to interject when members of the public might make some observations, but we do keep quite a tight running order, and we do expect, obviously, members of the public to respect members and officers when they speak at this meeting. I'd like to just sort of move on and just point out, and I hope there is nobody here which has come for the Holly Grange Cold Ash Hill application. I take it there's nobody here for that application. There is a note on the door, but just in case anybody slipped through without realising, it's been withdrawn from the agenda this evening due to some revisions being required to the plan submitted. And that's obviously for information also for members as well that might not be aware of that position. So I'm going to move on to apologies. Clerk, we have one apologies, I gather.
Yes, Chairman. So I've received apologies from Councillor Denise Gaines with Councillor Martin Colston attending as a substitute this evening.
Welcome again, Councillor Colston. I think this is probably third or fourth time you've attended. Okay, I'm now going to move on to item 2, which is the minutes of the meeting held of the 19th of February. Do I have any comments on those minutes? Right, Councillor Colston.
Just one. I'm mentioned in the minutes, but I'm not mentioned as being present. So perhaps that could be corrected.
I'm sure that will be included.
Thank you.
Okay. With that in addition, do I have a proposal? Yes, Councillor Dick.
So proposed, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Williston is second. All those in favour, please show. Thanks very much. Okay. Now, moving on to item 3, declarations of interest. Do you want me to sign it at the end of the meeting? Yeah, okay. Sorry. Right, any declarations? Right, going around the table, I'll start with Councillor Abbs.
Yes, Chairman, I've been lobbied on both applications this evening, but my mind is open to what the information presented this evening.
Okay, Councillor Dick.
Exactly the same wordage, thank you.
Councillor Hooker. Yeah, and Councillor Williston.
I'm obviously the ward councillor. I've also been lobbied on both sides. I should say I'm predisposed but not predetermined, and I'm very happy to listen to the debate and make a decision thereafter.
Thank you very much. Moving on the other side of the table, Councillor Foot.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I've been lobbied as well, like my colleagues, Councillor Abbs and Councillor Dick.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williston. Sorry, Councillor Colston.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Amersraj.
None from me, Chairman.
Councillor Vickers.
Not aware of any lobbying from supporters, but my personal interest is as the council's representative on the North Wessex Downs Council of Partners, but I don't regard that as being a conflict in any way.
And from the chair, obviously, I'm the same as Councillor Dick and Councillor Abbs. I've been lobbied as well. I'm sure. Obviously, it was in a written form, and that would obviously need to be declared, but it would not influence my decision at all, one way or the other. Okay. Right. Okay. So we are now going to move on to we're going to move on now to item 4, which is the first application that we're going to discuss tonight, which is 23/2142/MIN/MIAJ, land adjacent to M4 Membry Airfield, Lambourne Woodlands, Hungerford. Now, before we actually get into the discussion from the various speakers, for information for you, especially for new residents or attendees which are come specifically, and I would imagine specifically for this application, I'm going to just highlight exactly the procedure so that you are aware how it finally gets to the form of being discussed by the committee. Firstly, the officers will present the application, and then various groups will have the opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. And it's important to recognise that each group is allowed 5 minutes and not each person. So it will start with the parish or town council representative, objectors, supporters, the applicant and agent, and then ward members. The committee members will then have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification of the speakers. Members will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the officers, and then the committee will debate the item before determining the application. So I'm now going to turn to the various officers that are going to speak on this particular application. And I think, Alistair Buckley, you are going to present the application, but also I think possibly the two Pauls will have a contribution. And I think Alistair as well is going to make some observations as well, besides my assistant here. I'm going to say my assistant, but my right-hand man, Bob Dre, will make some observations as well. So I'm going to hand over to you, Alistair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I start off by drawing the members' attention to the update report, please? The Council has received another letter of objection this morning. It has covered similar issues that have been mentioned by other objectors, and they've been summarised in section 4 of the report and addressed in section 6. There's also a further response from the economic development team as well there. Also, a point of clarification, there is a typo in para 6.64 of the report. It's regarding the distance to the nearest sensitive residential receptor. It states it's 350 metres. It isn't, it's 135 metres, it should read. However, this doesn't affect the air quality assessment. The figures in the air quality assessment are correct. So it's merely a typo. Also, there was a letter submitted that was registered as a petition, and that has since been re-registered as individual responses. And I'm going to hand over to Mr. Are you going to do it at the end? Okay, that's fine. So that's Mr. Dre will cover that issue at the end of my presentation. So the application is for a new asphalt plant on land adjacent to the M4 at the Membry Industrial Estate. It's for 25,000 tonnes of asphalt per annum. The main issues are the principle of development, hydrology, traffic and highways, environment, health and amenity, and the horse racing economy. So this is a site plan. You've got the asphalt plant almost in the middle there, and there are some storage silos running along the eastern boundary. Just regarding the principle of development here, it's been established with policy Minerals and Waste Local Plan 5, the location of development, general waste management facilities, and policy Minerals and Waste Local Plan 15, the location of permanent construction aggregate infrastructure. Both of the policies stipulate that there'll be a presumption in favour of waste and construction aggregate infrastructure. And the proposals in existing sites with permanent planning permission for industrial development, B2 and B8, are allowed. This is an aerial view of the site. The eastern boundary is the boundary to the protected employment area. The site itself isn't in the protected employment area. It is adjacent to it. It does have B-class use. The wider site does have B-class use as well. So it functionally operates as part of the industrial estate. So the drainage strategy here, the initial queries over groundwater flood risk and use of SUDs were resolved with the local lead flood authority and who recommended a conditional approval of the drainage strategy. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Going on to, sorry, these are the sections of the site of the actual asphalt plant. It's approximately 12 metres high, just over 12 metres high. Okay. So some of the pictures, this is taken at the junction of the northern view of Ramsey Road for the junction of the private access road. This is the opposite view going, looking south down Ramsey Road, also from the same junction. This is the same junction, but looking into the private road, and it's looking on to, there are some B8 uses on either side. In the near ground, that's within the protected employment area. In the foreground, they're not in the protected employment area. This is looking from the site down the private road towards the motorway service area. That's the site access coming off the private road. And this is a second access to the extant B8 use, also off the private road. The northern boundary looking towards the M4, where the you can see the HGVs, the orange HGV in the corner there. That's the area where the attention pond will be sited approximately. Okay. This is the eastern boundary. The racking there is in the protected employment area, and there'll be a swale running along that boundary to take any floodwaters to the attenuation pond. This is looking back towards the site entrance and exit, and you've got the B-class uses beyond that. This again is looking southwards. There's more further B8 uses beyond that. This is approximately where the 15-meter, the landscape buffer will be planted along with the trees. Okay. This is looking westwards through the extant B8 use, and you have the motorway service area beyond that. Okay. In terms of highways, paragraph 116 of the NPPF states that planning applications should only be refused on highways grounds if there will be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network following mitigation would be severe. The Local Highways Authority concluded on balance that the traffic impact of this development would not be severe. However, the Local Highways Authority do object to the proposal on the basis of sustainability due to the nearest bus stop to the site being 1.5 kilometres away with infrequent services. There are also no pedestrian facilities on Ransby Road or Ermine Street. Regarding sustainability, the site functionally operates as if it were within the PEA, where it would be hard to resist such development on grounds of sustainability. It is considered impractical for deliveries or customers to access the site using anything other than vehicles that are capable of carrying aggregate and hot tarmac. Therefore, 5 employees is not considered to constitute a significant impact on sustainability. An additional facility at Membry would reduce overall traffic mileage across southern England due to some users having less distance to travel in order to collect asphalt. The proposal has been assessed as overall policy compliant. It is recognised that the LHA have objected to this proposal. However, sustainability is a wider concept in planning terms. The economic impact of the racehorse industry has been raised by objectors. The Council's Economic Development team do not oppose the approval of this application, as there is not enough tangible evidence of negative economic impact on the racehorse industry to offset the positive economic benefits to employment brought by this proposal. Regarding air quality that affected the racehorses, a number of objectors have been received, and they've referenced an appeal decision in 2015 for an application relating to an asphalt plant at Whitewall Quarry on the outskirts of Norton in Yorkshire. This application was approximately 50% larger than the proposal put before the committee this evening and differs markedly in that respect. In their appeal decision, the inspector stated that although it is impossible to be completely certain that there is no study explicitly assessing the influence of particulates at training grounds, it seems to me that such levels of concentration would be so low that the emissions from the asphalt plant would be unlikely to affect the respiratory health of racehorses. The evidence adduced does not provide a cogent basis for different conclusion. Carrying on. In addition, when determining a 2017 appeal decision, For an animal byproduct and horse cremation facility at Wessex Sawmill in Great Shefford, the inspector stated, "I note the council's environmental health officer found the incinerator would have a low impact on local air quality. In the absence of substantive evidence to demonstrate otherwise, I have no reason to find differently in this regard." Paragraph 201 of the MPPF states, "The focus of planning policies and decisions should be on whether proposed development is an acceptable use of land rather than the control of processes or emissions. The standards for assessing human health is the best judgment available on how horses might be affected." In upholding the LPA refusal, it is acknowledged that the 2015 Whitewall Quarry appeal decision takes into account the perceived harm to racehorses in the vicinity of an asphalt plant. However, any risk to the racehorse industry would only be perceived and has not been corroborated by any evidence. This established perception was a material consideration within the context of a wider planning balance decision. The proposed process has been assessed to minimise its environmental impact and will be subject to ongoing monitoring and environmental permit. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I do beg your pardon, Chairman. Can I invite Mr. Davidson from the Council's Environmental Health Officer to address the Council, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Roadstone coating or asphalt production is a prescribed process under the environmental permitting regulations, and therefore this process requires an environmental permit in order to operate. DEFRA class this type of process as low impact, and no air quality impact assessment or chimney height calculations are required as part of the application process. DEFRA produce a standardised model permit for this type of process. Asphalt is a mixture of aggregate, filler and a binder, which is usually bitumen. Bitumen makes up less than 8% of the product. An asphalt plant contains the following parts: coalfield hoppers for aggregates, aggregate heater and dryer, bitumen storage tanks, filler silos, mixer plant and bins for storing hot asphalt. Aggregate is conveyed from the cold feed hopper in proportions depending on the mix required and transported to the rotary drum dryer, which is on a slight inclination. As the drum rotates, the material falls through the hot air stream in the drum. A gas oil-fired burner is positioned at the bottom end of the drum. Water vapour and exhaust air are extracted from the cold end of the drum to the particulate arrestment plant, which is usually a bag filter house. The dust collected, known as filler, is fed back into the process or is stored in a separate enclosed silo. The hot aggregates drop into a bucket elevator and are transferred to individual storage bins based on size. The required grade of aggregate is dropped to a mixer hopper where it is coated with bitumen, which is pumped from a heated storage silo through enclosed pipes and injected into the mixer. Mixer times vary between 25 to 90 seconds. The finished asphalt mix is then transferred directly to a waiting truck or by conveyor to a heated asphalt storage silo. The site at Membray already has an environmental permit issued by the Council, which contains conditions based on best available techniques in order to control emissions and offensive odour outside the site boundary. The site is required to undergo biannual emission testing, stack testing for particulate matter, and various management techniques are employed in order to control dust on site. Bitumen odour is controlled through the use of temperature-controlled enclosed silos, ground-based pumps for filling, enclosed mixing and storage bins, and the choice of low-odour bitumens. The plant also has the ability to produce warm mix asphalt, which produces lower emissions. Inspections of the site will be regularly undertaken by officers from Environmental Health. As an asphalt plant already operates in West Berkshire at Theo and has been regulated by the Council for over 20 years. This plant currently has an annual throughput of 200,000 tonnes and has operated without any nuisance issues for this period. When both asphalt plants were operating, residential properties were located within 100 metres. The proposed Membray plant is limited to 25,000 tonnes per annum, and the nearest property is located around 135 metres on the other side of the M4. The applicant's air quality assessment demonstrates that air quality impacts will be insignificant, negligible at the closest receptors, and emissions will not cause exceedance of air quality objective limits for human health, and I agree with this assessment. Unfortunately, I cannot provide any assessment on the impact of air quality in horses, as there are no air quality standards or evidence to compare with. However, as detailed in the White Wall Quarry appeal decision, the inspector advised that no evidence existed that demonstrated an unequivocal link between emissions from a proposed asphalt plant and the respiratory health of racehorses. Given the low impact nature of the process and the environmental permit controls and regulation in place, I would agree with this view. However, I would add that motorways are major sources of traffic-related air pollutants, with vehicles emitting pollutants such as nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter. The air quality near motorways is often poorer than areas further away due to vehicle emissions, which can negatively impact health, particularly those living within 500 metres. Given that some gallops are located in close proximity northwards of the 6-lane M4 motorway, carrying over 130,000 vehicles per day, I would suggest that this would have a greater impact on air quality in the surrounding area rather than the proposed asphalt plant, which is located a further 100 metres south of said motorway.
Thank you very much. Do you want to come in? No, shall I get Paul? Right, Paul Goddard, I think you've operated the old system that you wish to speak, you put your name up vertically. Right, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. This site is located at the southern end of the Membury industrial estate, and access to it is via a road that is owned and maintained by National Highways. The nearest West Berkshire highways is Ramsbury Road to the east. There are two main issues that officers have considered with this planning application. First being traffic generation and impact, with the second issue being sustainability. The planning officer, Mr. Buckley, has put a considerable amount of what we've stated in the committee report, but I will be focusing on page 35 onwards, which details the expected traffic generation of the proposal, which is expected to increase HGV movements by an additional 30 HGVs, 15 in, 15 out per day, 68 light good vehicles, 34 in, 34 out per day, and 16 car vehicle movements, 8 in, 8 out per day. I understand this is based on 25,000 tonnes per annum, and for an additional robustness, the applicants have added additional 20%. I understand that the amount of throughput through the site is being secured and limited by condition. Due to significant concerns from the local community, the applicant's highway consultants engaged in some fresh traffic surveys that were undertaken at the beginning of December 2024. Some of the results of that are on page 36. Surveys were taken at the crossroads to the north of the site with Ramsbury Road and Ermine Street. Unfortunately, in some cases, we do need further data to make overall conclusions. But the surveys that were taken on the B4000 do seem to be more convincing. It does seem that over the last 5 years, there has been a significant increase in traffic on the B4000 through Woodland St Mary's. I can also tell you that the number of HGVs that use this route is probably one of the highest in the district for a B-class road, including, for instance, the B3421 Hambridge Road in Newbury. It is high. I do understand the concerns that are often expressed by residents in this location. However, The big test is always whether this proposal will add to any existing deficiencies to the extent that we would be successful at refusing this planning application on traffic grounds at appeal. There is limited evidence that all of this increase that are in those tables is necessarily from memory. We don't have enough evidence for us to suggest whether that's the case or not. There is limited or no evidence that the roads in the area suffer from severe congestion. And then we need to look at the personal injury accident data along the B4000. And what we have done is the highway consultants compared 5 years from 2019 to 2024 with the 5 years previously. And there is some detail on that on the bottom of page 35. Which seems to suggest that from 2014 to 2019, there were a total of 9 personal injury accidents, 6 resulting in slight injuries and 3 resulting in serious injuries. For the following 5 years, up to 2024, there were a total of 10 personal injury accidents. Again, 6 resulting in slight injuries and 4 resulting in serious injuries. So that would seem to suggest that the number of personal injury accidents along this road is somewhat stable. Before we go on, let's talk about what personal injury accidents are and when Thames Valley Police actually record them. They only record them when injuries have been sustained to people. They do not record them when there's damage to vehicles. And yes, all too frequently, when the emergency call is received, an ambulance will be dispatched, but it does not necessarily mean that anyone was taken away in the back of it afterwards. So that is the data, and the data has been checked with colleagues within West Berkshire at the Traffic Management and Road Safety team. Every personal injury accident is regrettable. But then the question is, once again, is this development going to make it any worse? What the applicant's consultants have done is they've considered all the committed developments in the area, traffic growth that's expected nationally, and by 2029, the figures in the table at the top of page 35, that increase is expected to be less than 1% of the traffic that we would expect to use this road by 2029. So on balance, therefore, I do not consider, as described in the National Planning Policy Framework, that the increase in traffic is sufficiently severe to warrant refusal. But it is a balanced recommendation. Your officers, however, are recommending refusal of this planning application on sustainability. The site is not near any particularly large areas of population. I do appreciate that there isn't many staff employed on this site. I understand it's 5. So we're not necessarily objecting to the planning application on staff vehicle movements. And yes, I wouldn't necessarily expect people to deliver and receive tarmac on the bus. Our concern is the location and its proximity to areas of population. We are concerned that HGVs delivering product and receiving product to the site would have to travel a greater distance than what they would if this facility was located near an area of much larger population. And on that basis, we consider this location will increase carbon emissions from what it would if it was located near somewhere like Reading, for instance. And therefore, that would be contrary to national and local policy on reducing carbon emissions, and it would be contrary to the climate change emergency that this council declared in 2019. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Paul. I'm now going to call on Bob Dray. I think you've got some comments to make, Bob.
Thank you, Chairman. And finally, for officers, I just wanted to clarify about the level of representation for this application, because concerns being raised because we've had a number of petitions or bundled submissions as well as representation. So I just want to set out a bit more detail. We've had more, obviously since the agenda report and even since the update report. So what I've got is an up-to-date set of numbers live as of this afternoon. I just want to clarify for you all. So as of now, on the system, we have recorded 89 contributors as having made valid objections. That's 45 in objection, 44 in support. But to be clear, of all of those, 4 are recorded as petitions, because either they're clearly petitions or because they were received as one submission with several multiple letters and documents within it. So I'll set out that in a bit more detail for you so you've got a clear idea of the number and level of interest. We've received 3 petitions or bundled submissions in objection and 1 petition in support. We've had a petition from Nambourne Parish Council, which was originally received in November 23, objecting. This was submitted several times where additional signatures were added, but the total is 129 in objection on that one. We had a further submission in February 25 from the Lambourne Trainers Association, and this is one where concern was raised that it was categorised as a petition, but I think because it didn't have individual names and addresses for each. There are names, it's because it's from the racehorse industry, it's like number of stables, own number of horses, etc. So there is that kind of level of detail, but it was received as a single bundle. So just to be clear, that bundle comprises 41 individual submissions within it. The majority are repeat letters with names, and like I said, number of stables, number of horses, and that kind of detail added. But obviously that one's principally concerned with the impact on the racehorse industry has been discussed. So that one, 41 submissions, if you like, within one. A further petition was received yesterday, objecting with 11 signatories. And finally, the petition in support has 134 signatories. So we obviously we record them in the way based on the number of contributors and that, but hopefully that just gives a clear idea of the scale in both ways. If you were to total up them, if you were to consider each signatory or submission within the submission as an individual representation, it would look something along the lines of 223 in objection and 177 in support. Ultimately, the committee report obviously sets out all of the relevant material considerations arising from that. There are summarised, and of course, every single document has been available for public inspection in the usual way. But I just wanted to draw your attention to that, so we're all clear about the level of interest either way. So yeah, thank you, Chairman, for providing that clarification.
Thank you very much. I think it's useful information. Did Paul Backus want to speak now, or are you here for questions primarily?
I'm primarily here for questions. I could just give a quick overview of the drainage strategy.
I think if you feel it's useful for the committee, please do. Go ahead.
Yeah. So with this site, the primary concerns were with the discharge location for surface water runoff and how exceedance would be managed throughout the site. After some back and forth with the applicant, we managed to determine that infiltration on this site would be viable. So all surface water on the site is dealt with via a combination of 2 drainage networks. One is a drainage network which consists of a swale flowing towards an infiltration basin. The other drainage network is a system of gullies, linear drainage and subsurface drainage which flow towards a pollution control system before discharging into a geocellular tank which allows water to soak away into the ground. I'm satisfied that both systems are acceptable and in line with design standards. In terms of managing exceedance, the applicant did, after request, implement a number of cut-off features throughout the proposed sites. So the water should not leave the site. It should not impact the adjacent service road or adjacent developments. They were the two major matters which we were concerned with. Also worth pointing out, we did invite the EA, I think, to speak on water quality matters, but I don't think they provided any feedback.
Thank you very much. I now call upon, I think, Chris Harris and Bridget Jones from Lambourne Parish Council. And I think you know the procedure. You've been before. Are you speaking primarily or both?
I'm speaking primarily, if that's okay.
Okay, all right, okay. And do you wish to be notified after 4 minutes?
Well, 4.5 minutes, preferably.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Okay.
the time starts as soon as you start speaking.
Okay, thank you. Chair, councillors and members of the Planning Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of Lambourne Parish Council and the wider Lambourne community. We're here to register our strong objection to the proposed construction of an asphalt plant at Membury. This application raises significant concerns on multiple fronts, environmental, economic and strategic, and we believe it represents a serious threat to the character and prosperity of our community and the wider district of West Berkshire. Lambourne is known as the Valley of the Racehorse for good reason. The racehorse industry in Lambourne is not just a matter of local pride, it's a vital economic driver and an internationally recognised centre of excellence. There are over 50 racehorse training yards in Lambourne Valley, employing 754 people directly, which represents 30% of the total employment in Lambourne. In addition to this direct employment, the service industries that support the training yards, including feed suppliers, veterinary services, farriers, transport and accommodation, provide hundreds of additional jobs and contribute millions of pounds to the local economy. In stark contrast, the proposed asphalt plant would create just 5 jobs. That is negligible economic return for a development that carries such a significant risk to the established economic foundations of the area. Moreover, the proposed site lies outside the designated employment area. National Planning and Policy Framework and Local Development Plan aim to focus industrial development within established employment areas. More importantly, there is a clear planning precedent that underscores the seriousness of this threat. In the case of Whitewall Quarry in Yorkshire, Planning Inspector David Cullingford rejected the appeal application for an asphalt plant due to its potential adverse impact on the nearby racehorse training industry. He stated that even if emissions were low, it would be the perception of the harm that an asphalt plant can do to the health of horses that would be enough to potentially threaten the local economy and prompt owners to take their horses elsewhere. A further application in East Riding in 2023 was twice rejected by North Yorkshire County Council, citing air quality and public health concerns. The same concerns are relevant here. Air quality is critical for the welfare and performance of racehorses. Horses, like human athletes, are highly sensitive to airborne pollutants. An asphalt plant generates fine particulates and volatile organic compounds, which are known to irritate the respiratory tract and reduce lung function. Lambourne's racing industry have highlighted these concerns to the council, but it appears that these concerns are being dismissed out of hand. Introducing industrial emissions to the sensible rural environment risks undermining decades of investment and hard-earned reputation. The perceived threat of poor air quality and the environmental disruption could lead to racehorse owners moving their horses elsewhere, with devastating consequences for the local economy and Lambourne's standing as a centre of excellence in the racehorse industry. This proposal also conflicts with strategic planning policies that have been carefully developed and protect and sustain the character and economic base of Lambourne and West Berkshire as a whole. I refer to the West Berkshire District Council 2019 report produced in conjunction with the Jockey Club Estates. Finally, this development directly undermines West Berkshire's vibrant village policy, which seeks to support the economic and social health of rural communities. An asphalt plant with its associated noise, pollution, odour and traffic does not support village life. It threatens to drive away the very industry and employment base that underpins Lambourne's economic and social fabric. The racing industry and its associated service sectors are the lifeblood of Lambourne, providing not only economic value, but also a sense of identity and purpose for the local community. In conclusion, this application jeopardises the future of a globally significant industry that contributes more than 30 million to the local economy. You're just over 4 minutes. Okay. Parishioners are legitimately asking why a planning authority could even consider granting permission for an asphalt plant that offers negligible economic benefit, 5 jobs, yet threatens the very core of our local community. The risks are too great, the benefits too small, and the precedent for refusal already established. Yorkshire Planning Authority refused permission as it could not see how it could possibly mitigate the risk of perceived harm that the asphalt plant would cause the racing industry. Without West Berkshire having a clear strategy to mitigate against perceived harm to the value of the racehorse, we urge this authority to do the same. Give us parity and reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're very close to 5 minutes. You've got a few seconds, so I don't know whether you want to just say a few words.
I've finished.
No,
well, the only thing about the traffic is that as the councillors who visited the site on Monday might have seen, Walker Logistics' current new proposal that is happening, and when that comes on stream, there will be a lot more traffic involved in the area. That's all I'd like to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, if you two just wait then, and probably questions from members of the committee. Looking around the table, any questions? No? Oh yes, now we got some questions. Right, starting with Councillor Foote and then Councillor Coulson and then Councillor Hooker.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Could I ask, we've heard already from the council officers that this site is right next door to the M4 motorway, and obviously Lambourne and Upper Lambourne is the other side of the motorway, north of the motorway. Do you have any data about the air quality impact on the racehorses from the motorway? Thanks.
We don't have that, but what we do have, and what you have, is the ANOB policy that clearly states that councils have a duty to protect the air quality within an ANOB. Adding an asphalt plant that generates particulates is compounding the problem. We know there's a motorway there. There's always been a motorway there, but adding an asphalt plant adds particulates that could affect the racehorse industry.
Okay, Councillor Coulson.
A similar question from me, really. Was it Lambourne is very successful with the horse racing industry despite the M4 and the potential pollution from that. Is there any evidence that the proximity of the M4 has dissuaded or put off any owners or trainers from setting up there?
No.
Okay.
But you're adding.
No, I understand. I just wanted to.
Okay.
That was just
fine.
a question. Thank you.
We knew that the motorway issue would come up.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hooker.
Thank you, Councillor, for your presentation. You mentioned several times in there your concern because of the perceived effect this is going to have. Could you explain to us what you consider to be the perceived?
Okay, well, in the Whitehall case, it was clear that they felt that they couldn't mitigate against a perceived risk. They said they found that the risk of harming horses and by extension the local racing industry could not be satisfactorily mitigated. The council's decision cited conflict with local planning policies on environmental protection and economic sustainability. Notably, the refusal reasons highlighted that any economic benefit from the plant was outweighed by the potential adverse impacts on the local economy, including employment in the existing racing industry. In short, preserving the health of the horses and the viability of Malton's historic racing sector was deemed paramount, and this official stance set a precedent, acknowledging equine health as a material consideration in planning. East Riding of Yorkshire Council twice refused proposals, citing air quality, and whilst this did not centre on horses specifically, it underscores how environmental impacts can derail asphalt plants.
Thank you, Chairman.
Right, Councillor Raj and then Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Hooker asked the same question I was going to ask about the perceived harm. I think I'm satisfied with the answer. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Abs. I've got you, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm just wondering whether you mentioned Walker Logistics and increase in traffic, but obviously you ran out of time. Do you have any numbers?
I don't have the numbers.
We do have the numbers.
Well, I don't have the numbers. Yes, sorry.
Do either of you have the?
we have the numbers. Walker's Logistics was granted a personal condition, as you're aware, and that allowed them to suppress the traffic figures using the figures that they were currently projecting, which was 220. We had a tricks consultant do the whatever you call it, the what is it called? Yeah, the survey. And essentially they said there would be 778 additional vehicles. Tricks data in that case, we brought it to the committee and it was acknowledged that usually you would use tricks data, but in this case, a personal condition was granted.
Okay, thank you. I think
so we know there's going to be a lot more traffic.
Well, the rest will come from clarification from officers, I'm sure.
Okay, right, Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, I want to go back to Yorkshire.
Yes.
The example that you keep quoting from.
Yes.
There are small asphalt plants and there are very large asphalt plants. Even the one that the officers mentioned in Thiel, I calculated, it is 12 times larger than this and much closer to residential and other industrial and the motorway. So do we know the size of the one? You know, I'm trying to see what the differences might be. I understand the argument about perception, but you can deal with perception if it's dealing with a very small potential harm, whereas you probably can't if it's a very large.
Yeah, I think if the condition is imposed and enforced, that's another issue, then it would be running at 1/9 of its capacity. If it ran at full capacity, it would be comparable. And we all know that once it's on site, a further planning application could come along and ask for them to extend their capacity. And what we found with Membury, sadly, is that once something is there, it's approved 9 times out of 10.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, I'd like to sort of follow up from Councillor Vickers in relationship to the comments you made on the Yorkshire case. Are you aware how far the racehorse industry in that part of Yorkshire is from that proposed site?
Yes, there were details. There were some as close as a mile away. But what we haven't mentioned is the equine industry, racing industry, equine industry. We have studs. Carisbrooke Stud wrote a letter of objection within a mile. We have studs that are in less than half a mile from the proposed site. We have horse breeding industry that is literally just opposite the motorway.
Thanks for that. That's useful information.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, no further questions, right? You can return. Okay, sorry, Councillor Abs.
Yeah, could you just confirm to me which is the closest stud as far as you're concerned?
Well, there's Kingswood Stud at the top of the hill.
Kingswood or Kingwood?
Kingwood Stud. There's Carisbrooke Stud if the wind blows in the opposite direction.
I'm just concerned with the closest, if that's okay.
Yes, okay.
Do you know how far that one is?
Less than a mile.
Less than a mile. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, you can return. Now, we've got 3 objectors listed. Is all 3 intended to speak, or have you decided amongst yourself? Because I've got down Mrs. Palmer Green, Lucy Snowden and Tony King. Is all... You're not going to speak? Okay. I'm just thinking regarding how you're going to portion your 5 minutes. That's all I was worried about. Are you going to split 2.5 minutes each?
Just how we'll do the 5 together. Yeah. Okay. We'll manage.
Okay. Right. Well, commence when you're ready, and we will notify you after 4 minutes.
Thank you. And good evening, councillors. My name's Lucy Snowden. I'm here to represent the Lambourne Trainers Association and really just give you a bit more colour about the racing industry. I'm representing all the trainers and pre-trainers in the wider Lambourne Valley who all wrote objection letters to this planning application. Those trainers and pre-trainers represent probably around 1,500 thoroughbreds within the Lambourne Valley. We do feel, although it's been addressed, that our voice has been ignored in all of this. I'm sure you're all aware, but in 2019, West Berkshire Council, in association with Jockey Club Estates, put together this report. It highlighted that the racing industry contributes over 22 million per year, and it's responsible for 1 in 3 jobs in the area. Lambourne is a centre for excellence. I don't want to repeat what we've been talking about. There are over 850 horses trained within Lambourne and Upper Lambourne, and 120 horses a month come and use the gallops. Lambourne's reputation is everything, and anything that could be detrimental to that, we really should challenge. Even the perceived harm we've all been talking about to equine respiratory health could be sufficient to lead owners to withdraw their horses from the area, and that really is our biggest concern. Human health that we have the data on, racehorse health, they are 2 different things. We are dealing with equine athletes here. And so, again, it's the perception of the emissions that we are concerned about. Racehorses are particularly vulnerable to changes in air quality, whether that's through crop rotation during the year, because their airway exposure is magnified by their increased respiratory rate and volume during exercise. Every racehorse trainer in Lambourne has worked really hard to attract owners. I know, I'm married to one. We live and breathe it. And if owners decide not to have horses in Lambourne, that's hugely detrimental. You all know about the Whitehall quarry and why it was rejected. I just want to do a few quotes from this report from Brian Little of West Berkshire District Council. Lambourne's impact and importance is far-reaching, not only from Newbury's economy and the region, but for the living and working rural environment and economy. Nick Patton, Managing Director of Jockey Club Estates. Lambourne's natural attributes make it a wonderful location for training horses. Our objective is to attract as many owners, trainers and horses to Lambourne as we can and further build on the progress made in recent years. Our thanks to West Berkshire District Council for their support for this project, which has demonstrated the value and importance of the racing industry to the village and surrounding area. It is vital that the racing industry in Lambourne is protected and nurtured so that we can continue to grow and contribute to the region. Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to share my opposition concerns regarding this proposed tarmac making facility and the fumes it may produce. As a stud owner in the immediate area, I'm deeply worried about the potential health risks to my mares and my young foals from inhaling these harmful fumes on a regular basis. If there's even a slight chance of this occurring, it could spell disaster for my business. My clients might seek alternatives in other regions for breeding their young stock, which would significantly impact my sales. Additionally, my 7 mares would become redundant and lose their value. I'm not alone in this concern. There are other horse owners with studs, livery yards, competition training centres and riding establishments within the area, including G.P. McCoy's pre-training yard for young racehorses. As of the last count, over 200 horses along Ermine Street would be affected, let alone the whole of the racing industry in Lambourne Village and surrounds. As you have been made aware, a similar asphalt site was proposed in the north of England. It was refused immediately, with the second refused on...
We're on 4 minutes.
On appeal, okay. Which stopped this construction in the vicinity for breeding studs and racehorses for the possible detrimental damage to their lungs by breathing in the toxic pollution emissions from these plants, along with all wildlife creatures which we hasten to protect. The northern racing industry was based on the loss for them of £22 million. Lambourne would be looking at a loss of £23 million per year, a huge chunk of which goes to the local councils and government, and which this asphalt business could not come close to providing these funds to our local council and government with.
We're being told this plant will employ just 4 workers compared to hundreds of jobs lost in our racing and equine industry.
We're up to 5 minutes. Can you conclude, please?
Yes, definitely. We therefore ask that this council will afford us the same protection for our animals, our livelihoods and our industry as our northern counterparts were rightly granted and have set a precedent.
Thank you very much. Right, questions? Councillor Foot and Councillor Vickers and Councillor Abs.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, ladies. Could I ask, obviously we live in a rural area and you've highlighted the delicate nature of the horse's respiratory system, particularly when they're exercising. Could I ask what happens around harvest time when, you know, if ever we get a nice dry hot summer, you know, there's a lot of dust around. Could you just tell the committee what sort of mitigation or what happens at that time of year as well, please? Thanks.
Well, I can tell you it's always very difficult for trainers, especially when rape, for example, is planted. So I think that Will Wriggle goes to a lot of effort to make sure that the farmers don't plant rapeseed near the gallops. I mean, you can feel it. They can feel it. It's something that we're always struggling with. The respiratory health of racehorses is something trainers always working on. That's why we have outdoor pens. It's all about ventilation. So that's why even the perceived harm is just such a big issue for us in the training community.
Councillor Vickers.
Both you ladies obviously very closely connected with the racing industry. Are you, either of you, involved with the nearest ones, the ones that I think are relatively recently established, the Kingwood and...
Yeah, I am.
You are. I thought you probably were. When did you establish?
I've been there 15 years.
Right. Now, we've heard from the parish council that the motorway has been there forever. Well, it hasn't actually, but it's been there for a very long time. Or at least it's been known to be going to be built. I can remember when it wasn't there, but it was one of the last sections, wasn't it? So was that not ever considered as a risk factor by racehorse owners, trainers?
Not for breeding, it wasn't the risk.
So it's the particular subset of the industry that is to do with breeding. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Contained in this product.
Yeah, well, we can deal with how that product is contained and covered and so on with, you know, other officers, questions to officers. Yes, if you want to add to that. I think
it's quite interesting from where we are located in Lambourne. There are days when we can't hear the motorway at all, depending on where the wind goes. There are days we can hear the motorway. So, you know, my concern would be there'll be days when the wind just comes straight across the valley. And obviously, you know, we haven't got this data. So what can we say? But there are days when it's the motorway is so clear. So what is coming across in the air? Fumes from the motorway, yes, but we're managing to work with that. It really is the perceived harm, and I think that is what we really, why we'd like you all to object to this.
Can I just, because you mentioned we haven't got this data, who do you see should be responsible for monitoring this? I mean, obviously this particular application that we can impose a condition related to that, but you know, if this has been an ongoing concern with the motorway.
Well, my personal opinion is that I don't think you can use human data when you're talking about racehorses.
Understood.
The research I've done, there seems to be data that's been gathered in the States because of things like wildfires. I appreciate it's totally different. I can't find any over here. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place.
Councillor Abs. Didn't you have your head now? No?
Oh. No, sorry, Chairman. I was going to ask a question, but it was, I think it kind of answered. It was exactly where your stud is. It's not Kingwood, is it? It must be another one.
Yeah, I'm
where exactly
I'm
are
on the
you?
opposite side of the road of Kingwood. So
What nearer the
on Ermine Street. On Ermine Street. I'm closer. And the motorway have planted all the trees to protect me from fumes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Transport, so tree cover.
So how far would you say is from the services, this location to Ermine Street then at its closest point? If you're based off of Ermine Street.
I've got the mast within my fields.
You've got the mast, the Membry mast, is that right?
Yes.
So that puts you 600 metres away from it. So basically,
but I've completely surrounded by trees.
No, I'm trying to understand. You're trying to understand the distances. People are mentioning distances, so I'm trying to get in my head how close things are. So thank you. Sure.
Okay, right. I think we exhausted the questions. Okay. Oh, sorry. When you were nodding before, Vice Chairman, I thought you were nodding on something else, not actually to indicate you wanted to speak. Sorry about that.
You're welcome. Thank you for your presentation. A bit of clarification. You mentioned there about your perceived detriment to the horses' health on air quality. This was one of my concerns as well, I must admit. But I just wonder what data you're actually using to say that this is going to be detrimental. Because
I'm not using any data.
I've looked into it, and this is why I think our officers gave a best presentation as they could as to the output of the plant.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering.
I've got data.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So health impacts on asphalt plants on horses and related planning rejections. Asphalt plants release air pollutants. I won't try and read through all of those. It's quite complicated. That are known to cause respiratory problems and skin irritation in exposed populations. Horses are particularly sensitive to the air quality. Equine veterinary research shows that airborne particulate matter and dust can trigger or worsen equine asthma, leading to coughing, laboured breathing, and reduced performance. As I said, this is something that all trainers are always trying to do. We're trying to find that margin that makes our horses better than anyone else's. And it is a lot to do with ventilation of boxes, being as clean as possible. I can assure you we steam our hay to make sure that there's nothing in there that's going to impact in a negative way on their health. It is all about the best we can give them, the best health.
Okay, thanks very much. You can return back. Okay. We've now got Keith Fryer and Paul O'Neill as the supporters. Again, are you both speaking or?
No, I'm speaking on, well, I have a statement to read on behalf of Mr. O'Neill. I'm purely doing that because there are 5 minutes available. I've got my own statement. The words of Mr. O'Neill are his and not mine. So if that's acceptable, I can read them.
That's fair enough.
Okay.
Obviously within the 5 minutes,
of
that's
course.
the important thing.
But
So,
I want to make it absolutely clear they are not my words.
Okay.
Okay.
Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I know this is the statement from Mr. O'Neill. I know Mr. Drake, a partner in the proposed planning through the horse industry, as he's an owner himself. Sand, through its use in asphalt production, appears to be being used as a possible factor to reject this proposal. Numerous Lambourn trainers already use the fibre sand maintained by Jockey Club Estates, as well as Valley Equine Vets, who deal with high volumes of surgeries on horses. These surfaces create a lot of dust. Sand is found in the majority of gallops, and it doesn't seem to prevent a majority of trainers or owners from running their horses on such surfaces. The leading veterinary respiratory surgeon also has dug sand on their gallops. I met with Mavis Drayton of Little John's Farm in Reading. She's been there for over 70 years. There has been an asphalt plant there for the last 40 years, and she stated that to date there has never been a single problem with horses breathing or any other problems from the plant. Over the years, they have had all kinds of horses, from Shetlands to thoroughbreds at the farm. The horses there share a fence line with the plant. Her house is 130 metres from the plant, and she's never had any health issues. She says she can't smell or hear it. Her land also turns into the Reading Festival site once a year, where thousands of people picnic, camp and party while the asphalt plant remains in full operation, causing zero harm and is not required to close by the local authority. What must be said is that over 100 people from the racing industry signed the petition in favour of the plant, with at least 20 of them being horse owners. Lambourn is home to a lot of people in the asphalt industry. Indirect employment is massive in asphalt because the smallest amount takes many hands to lay. Let's also not forget many people who leave the racing industry to join the construction industry, as indeed I have. To conclude, I'm in favour and confident after reading all the documents that no harm will be caused to humans or animals from this plant. My statement is as follows. My name is Keith Fryer, a director of Fort Builders Merchants operating across 3 sites at the Membry Industrial Estate. I'm here to vocalise our strong support for the proposed asphalt plant put forward by Putnam Properties. As the planning officer has confirmed in the committee report, the development positively contributes to all 3 dimensions of sustainable development, a principle which underpins the planning system. From an economic perspective, the production of asphalt will help support the construction industry and wider economy, and socially provide direct and, more importantly, indirect job opportunities. Environmentally, the site is in a perfect location given the extremely close proximity to the M4 and the pollutants derived therefrom. The committee report confirms the proposal is acceptable in principle, complying with all relevant local and national policies. It is also noted the proposal will provide an enhancement to the North Wessex Downs national landscape. The application has been found to be acceptable in all other technical areas, including flood risk, drainage, ecology, trees, impact on residential amenity, noise, air quality. There is local support for the application in the form of 44 supporting comments, as well as a petition with over 100 signatories. Amongst the objectors,
now on 4 minutes.
Traffic issues appear to be the main concern, but neither National Highways or local highways teams have objected in relation to either highway safety or impact on the highway network. The only concern is the sustainability of the site's location due to lack of nearby bus services and ability to cycle to and from the site. However, it is clear in the committee report that the level of harm arising from this would not be significant and could not warrant refusal of the planning application. In the absence of any overwhelming technical objections, I trust the committee will accept the recommendation by officers and approve the application this evening. Quite simply, where else would be a better place to position this proposal?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well within the 5 minutes. Please stay there. There might be some questions. Right, Councillor Vickers.
Thank you very much, sir. You operate, as you said at the beginning of your statement, several companies.
No, one company on 3 sites at the
in Membry.
All within that area.
Now you then went on to say that it's perfect site because it's next to the M4. Do you mean it's because you can use the M4 access because nobody's stopping you, or is it?
No. I mean it very simply because, to me, as you know, we've heard a lot of discussion this evening around pollutants, etc., and we've had, in my opinion, very unsubstantiated data about the harms and everything else. If you've got something in excess of 100,000 vehicles every day going along that road, the pollutants from them, to me, would be massively beyond what any single plant would do. And these plants have got very, very rigorous controls about what they can and, more importantly, cannot do. So therefore, ergo, if you don't want to put it there, you know, we have a lot of, and I understand why, you know, people don't want things in their own backyards. It's a human nature. But ultimately, where would you place a plant?
I think you've answered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, sir, for your words. I find them interesting. There was one phrase that I'll need you to explain. You said it's an enhancement to the national landscape. I believe you said that. Can you help me? I may have misheard.
Yeah, to the North Wessex Downs national landscape.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
that's because if you take the use that's there now, and the fact that you've got no development there at all at the moment, so you try to actually make sure that you can actually add something into that industrial area. You know, I think my gentleman here, who's going to speak later, will be able to give you more information on that.
Well, I'll rest in that case. Thank you.
Okay, right, Councillor Abs.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation, sir. You mentioned emissions from the motorway. Obviously, we're all aware of that. Could you give me your opinion on what has happened to car emissions over the last few decades? Have they been going up or have they been going down?
I would think they've gone down significantly. I would think all vehicles have produced a lot less particulates now than they did.
So would you agree, therefore, that the effect from the motorway is in fact in decline, not on the rise?
I couldn't tell you whether it's in decline, but I would say that it's definitely less now than it was before. The reason I say that I couldn't necessarily tell is whether the volume, the actual number of vehicles, is less or more than it was 50 years ago. And I would seek to suggest that the number of vehicles travelling on the M4 today would be massively more than it was when that motorway first opened.
I'll ask the officers to see if they can clarify that point.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Foot.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, thanks, Mr. Fryer. Could I ask, my question really relates to vehicle movements. You operate, as you said, 3 sites from
yes,
that site. What's your impression of how the vehicle movements would be impacted were this asphalt plant to be approved?
Well, obviously, there is inevitably an impact. It's a no-brainer. But I think, again, I haven't got the statistics at hand, but the gentleman there from the transport element behind you, forgive me, whoever that was who spoke, set out that effectively the analysis shows that it would be less than 1% impact. I think I'm right in saying that? Yeah, so I'm not saying anything that's incorrect. So that really would be my answer to you. So if 1% some people feel is significant, maybe, but I would call it negligible.
Okay. Further questions? No, I think we've sorted it. So you can return to...
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Right, I'm now going to call upon Mark Drake and Andrew Turvell, agent and applicant. Well, I don't know if you're both going to speak or...
I'm going to speak on my own.
Okay, you're going to speak on your own.
Hopefully less than 5 minutes.
Okay, fair enough. We will start the stop clock soon as you're ready to start.
Good evening, members. Much of what I want to say simply reinforces what officers have said, and I'm very grateful for them coming here, particularly Russell Davidson at short notice this evening, to actually explain how these plants operate and what the implications are. The report addresses all of the issues: flooding, drainage, biodiversity, and site capacity. Site capacity has been raised as a concern, but it's proposed that the site capacity should be limited to 25,000 tonnes per annum. What is clear from all the representations that have been made is that there are 2 contentious elements to this application: traffic and equine health. And I'll address those, albeit I'm going to be repeating a lot of what's already been said. A concern was raised in the preparation of the latest transport note that there were some missing accident records, but notwithstanding that, the Local Highways Authority have confirmed that there's no clear trend of any increase in personal accident, injury accidents along that road. In terms of physical numbers, which one Mr. Foot was just asking about here, the development could generate, and this is based on a robust assessment, assuming 30,000 tonnes, not 25,000 tonnes, could generate an additional 57 two-way vehicle movements per day, 15 HGVs, 34 LGVs, and 8 two-way car vehicle movements. So that quantifies the number, and you've just had a discussion about what the physical impact of that is in terms of percentage. It's less than 1% increase in the traffic growth. And I'll reinforce the point that was made by Mr. Buckley in his submissions, saying that the MPF states that development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. The reports clearly demonstrate that's not the case, and the LHA has concluded that the traffic impact of the development would not be severe. We then turn to the question of equine health, and I appreciate that is a very emotive matter. Lambourn is recognised as a centre of excellence for racehorses. There's a perception that the plant could damage the livelihoods of trainers and that owners might wish to put their horses in training elsewhere. It's a perception. Reference has been made at great length to the Whitewall Quarry application, and we need to be clear that that was not rejected by officers. It was determined and dismissed at appeal. It was primarily dismissed at appeal because it did not comply with the Minerals Local Plan or the Rydell Local Plan. But the inspector nevertheless addressed the concerns of the racehorse industry. The racing establishments at Moulton were far, far, far closer than they are at Lambourn to the Membry site. There was a visible perception element as well, which is not the case at Membry. The site at Membry cannot be seen from the valley of the racehorse. In considering the possible effects of the race on racehorses, the inspector stated, and I quote, "The emissions from this asphalt plant would be unlikely to affect the respiratory health of racehorses. The evidence adduced does not provide a cogent basis for a different conclusion." The issues regarding dust are about the potential for dust dispersal and deposition, and that depends on the climatic conditions. The report goes into this at great length and gives a map, and it shows how many potential dry, windy days there may be when there could be a dust event. For the prevailing west-southwesterly wind, that's 4.5 working days in any one calendar year. There would only be a leak if there were a failure in the suppression measures. My colleague, Mr. Fryer, has addressed the implications for number of people working, a lot of people coming from the racehorse industry now working construction. Lambourn isn't just simply for those engaged in the racing sector. There has to be a balanced view taken here. The Economic Development Report confirms that there is not enough tangible evidence of the economic impact upon the racehorse industry to offset the positive economic benefits to employment brought forward by the application. I could touch on sustainability, but I think that's been covered and I'm conscious of time. I would just correct one point that the East Riding application, which Councillor Jones referred to from the Parish Council, that has actually been approved on the third time of asking. The proposal accords with the MPPF and it meets all the development plan policies. And I respectfully submit
just come up to 5 minutes.
There are no substantive planning grounds on which this application should be refused. Members, I feel, should therefore resolve to grant planning permission as they have been recommended to by their senior planning officer and other professional consultants. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Amathraj first. Councillor Abs next.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Todd. You mentioned that you acknowledged the perceived harm from that dust disposal from the objectors. My question to you is that have you engaged with the Lambourn Parish Council and then the Lambourn Association for Equine Industry for this application?
We would have dearly loved to have done, but the reality is that the petition or collective response was actually obtained and is dated, the LTA's letter is dated from July 2024. It was only thrown in to West Berks on the 20th of February, giving no chance for any meaningful discussion as to what mitigation there could be, how those concerns might be addressed, and indeed what the specific concerns are. I'm concerned that a lot of people have just hooked onto this Whitewall Quarry thing, thinking that's their saving grace, and they haven't actually read the air quality report. I've just explained about the 4.5 days. The 4.5 days could only ever be a risk if all the measures that are going to be engaged by the environmental permit that Russell's been talking about fail. That means that when it's dry and windy, the traffic, the road is damped down. All of those measures have to be put in place and will be monitored. So the risk of there being an escape of the nature we're talking about, I suggest, is negligible, right? And we're still concerned, as rightly Tony Vickers mentioned, about the M4. Some of the establishments, the Lambourn monorail, as I would call it, the big white White Elephant possibly could be called, training facility, where that was built within 900 metres of the motorway. And if there were real concerns about equine health, I would not suggest that a pre-training facility of that magnitude, a £20 million investment, would have been made within 900 metres of the motorway. And even in the event of an escape of material, you have to recognise that dust actually falls out over a distance. So larger particulates fall out within the site, smaller elements would then go, and nearly everything falls out within a kilometre. It's referred to in the report at quite some length. So I think these concerns are unfounded.
Sorry. Apologies.
I want to make it very clear to members, because this is a highly contentious issue. And it needs to be addressed properly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you expanded on my question way beyond, because my initial question was, have you had a chance to engage with the community? But my supplementary on that one would be, your message seems to be that there is a likelihood of that the fumes or the waste from that asphalt plant travels through the air based on the wind direction on all this fronts. But my question is, what is there as a plant owner or an agent for this industry in this premise? What is the worst case scenario planning, like a storm or a worst case scenario would be that it would be a big pollution creating event? So have you thought about that worst case scenario and the impact? I've asked the officers as well, but from your end, I want to understand.
The worst case scenario is that there is the cyclone on the plant fails, the bag filter on the plant fails, there's negligence on the part of the operator. It's a very dry, windy day, more than force 4 on the Beaufort scale, that could, not necessarily would, depends on what's actually being processed at the time, lead to an escape of dust. Okay. And that depends on the wind direction.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Right, Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to stick to numbers if I may. You made one phrase, and if I've got the number of fars wrong, please forgive me. Far, far, far closer. What's that? You said what context? It's far, far, far closer, but you didn't qualify it. I assume you're talking about the other.
So in terms of trying to make, you were very concerned about the Whitewall Quarry and trying to get an assessment of distance.
I haven't made my mind up yet. Please don't put words in my mouth. I'd just like you to answer the question. What does far, far, far closer mean?
Well, in what context? It's far closer. Far closer means that it is closer, right? So the nearest site racing establishment at the Whitewall Quarry plant was within 100 metres, 180 metres of the boundary of the quarry. 180 metres at Membry would only take you to the north side of the eastbound carriageway.
Thank you. That's all I was looking for, is a number.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Further questions at all? Okay, right. You can return to your seat, and I now call upon the ward member.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope I won't need 5 minutes, but I would appreciate a warning at 4.5, perhaps. When I'm representing Lambourne Ward, I try to give a balanced view of the pros and cons of the relevant application. However, on this occasion, I've been overwhelmed by residents and organisations opposed to this application, and only one business has approached me to support it, who spoke this evening. We have here an application which is strongly opposed by both the most affected parish councils, namely Lambourne and Baden, just across the border into Wiltshire, as well as Chiltern Foliat Parish Council, again just over the border, expressing major concern. Both the Wiltshire parish councils, are about 2 miles away. I understand the initial concept of this asphalt plant was caused by the poor response and lack of opening hours of an existing plant 2 miles north of junction 15 of the M4. I understand further that these problems dating back 3 years have been fully remedied. It is now operating at normal capacity every weekday and Saturday mornings. This is in addition to the other existing asphalt plant very close to junction 13 of the M4 Mithil. Both of these are no more than 20 minutes drive from the proposed plant at Membry, and as such, in my mind, a serious question as to the necessity which is so vigorously opposed by the community. One of the biggest issues which has come out over recent weeks is the strong opposition from the equine and racehorse training industries, who have major concerns over particulates and their impact on high-class horses. The best way I can describe this is that they are the equivalent of elite athletes. At full pace, they are taking in huge amounts of air, which the standard assessments of contamination do not remotely cover. I won't go on about the Yorkshire case, which has obviously been talked about far too much. Lambourn is the second biggest racehorse training centre in the UK, after Newmarket. It employs 750 people directly and around 1,000 people in total in Lambourn, almost a third of the working population. It generates now over 25 million directly into the local economy every single year. Yet it is a fragile industry. Owners are not wedded to Lambourn, and pardon the pun, if there's a whiff of concern over air quality, they are quite capable of upping sticks and going to Newmarket. I am also concerned that the current application only proposed to use 11% of the total capacity of the plant. If I could use an analogy, why would someone want to buy a one-bedroom flat, buy a 9-bedroom house? This is salami tactics to avoid the full impact on the environment and, more importantly, traffic generation on the already busy B4000. The conditions say that expansion can be achieved on planning consent. But can any member seriously believe that an application on an existing plant requiring no physical changes will be refused? I think not. My final concern is the adjoining service station and the emergency access route. In the summer, the service station is regularly used by motorists buying picnics and sitting on seating or on the grass. The smell from an asphalt plant is hardly conducive companion. Those on the site visit will have seen the amount of traffic illegally using the emergency access route. With the best will in the world, contractors use this plant will also use it for fast access to the M4 and beyond. It is technically national highways who should be monitoring this, but they are clearly failing. In any event, our sadly under-resourced enforcement team, working only during working hours, are ill-equipped to be capable of containing expansion or working out of the designated hours. My final point is I've had an email this afternoon from one of my residents who lives very close by and has 2 young children, both of whom suffer from asthma. He is deeply concerned and he asked me to raise the point tonight. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wollaston. Members, questions to the ward member? No, seems you've got
lucky me.
Yes. Okay, right. We come to the point in the discussion that it's members asking questions of officers, and on what I would suggest, bearing in mind there's several officers with specific responsibilities in relationship to this application, perhaps you could address which officer you wish to address the question to. So, Councillor Amos-Farage first, and then Councillor Vickers, Councillor Abs for third.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a question to the case officer or anyone who can answer on the economic viability side of things. Correct me on this one, Chairman. I think on the this size of an application or a kind of application, normally we would get an economic viability assessment. I can't see any for this. And the only place I asked this question because section 3.3 asks us to give us material consideration to the job creation. And it says, it asks us to refer 6.33, paragraph 6.33. But 6.33 is about Highways Authority objections and that kind. And the only place, the only sentence refers to that employment is in the 3 lines to that paragraph ending is that employing 5 people. And we heard about that one. My question to officers is that we have been asked to consider this job creation as a major factor in considering this application. And there is just only one reference to this entire report, just a job creation of 5 people. I asked this question before we go into the debate. I'll explain that, but can officers explain why there is no economic viability assessment?
Right, I'm going to call upon Bob Drade to start off your request.
Thank you, Chairman. I confirm there's no validation requirement for an application of this nature to be accompanied by an economic. Well, either a viability assessment or an economic, I think you mean an economic report in terms of demonstrating the economic benefits as opposed to viability assessment. So there is no validation requirements. We can't insist upon it in that respect. Ultimately, like any other consideration, we need to take into account the economic benefits or potential disadvantages. That principally here is obviously the employment of up to 5 people, I believe. I don't know if there's anything further the case officers could add in terms of evidence submitted with the application.
Well, I would just say there was some letters of support did state that there's indirect employment involved with the asphalt plant, but nothing specifically submitted with the actual application itself.
Does that satisfy your?
Thank you, Chairman. It answers the question. So, yeah, but I will use this one in the debate. Okay. Can I ask a further question on the highways officer, Paul Goddard, and I will finish off my question. Okay. Sure. Yeah. This question to Mr. Goddard. While on the site visit, we noticed that there were a lot of vehicles coming onto the site, basically from the direction or the entrance, which is supposed to be authorized vehicles. Seems to be a mystery to me, or a strange situation where the number of vehicles within an hour or so, there's been a number of vehicles coming through. Are all the vehicles coming through are authorized, or if they are not authorized, what are the specific measures are in place for this, for the entire site or for this one when it comes up to prevent that those access of or entry of those vehicles and accessing unauthorized manner?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm assuming you're meaning the access road from the service station. Yes. As I mentioned at the start of my briefing, that access road is owned and maintained by National Highways. So it's not under our jurisdiction as a local highway authority. Our view on this is we've assessed the planning application, assuming that 100% of traffic to and from this proposal will go to the B4000, because on the basis that at any stage, National Highways could shut those gates that are there, they're just permanently open, they could shut that gates and stop that road and stop traffic coming through from the service area. But that is a decision for them to make. What's our view as a local highway authority? We could write to them and complain about it, that it's being abused in such a way. But also, one less HGV that goes on the B4000. Do we really want to push them on it? Is our view, or do we leave things as they are? And but as I said, this planning application has been assessed that that shouldn't be happening, and all vehicles to and from the site will go via the B4000.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, my question is to Russell, is it, on environmental health? First of all, did I hear it right that the Thiel plant is 300,000 tonnes a year?
It's 200.
200. Still, that's about 8 times what you're limiting this one to. So my basically the end question I want to know is how much time overall will this material, which releases the vapours, be exposed and capable of releasing vapour? So that breaks down to the part of during one process, how much of the time is it exposed to vaporise and be a pollutant? And also, how constant is the operation of the site during the working day, given that it's a plant that has a much greater capacity than we're limiting it to, as I understand it?
Are we talking about the Thiel plant, or are we talking about?
No, I'm talking about the plant in question.
Okay. Okay. The process of roadstone coating is classified as low impact. I mean, the content of bitumen is only 8% of the product. The bitumen is stored in an enclosed silo. It is passes through enclosed pipes into a mixing hopper, where it mixes with the hot aggregate, where it mixes for between 8 and 20 seconds. That is enclosed. It then is either stored in an enclosed hopper, waiting for an insulated hopper, waiting for a truck to come in, or it is dropped straight away into the back of a lorry, and the lorry leaves. It will be sheeted, and then it will leave. So the actual exposure to bitumen, which is, I mean, it's only 8% of the product, is extremely low. There's no bitumen goes up the stack. The stack is purely for drying aggregate, and the dust from the aggregate will pass through abatement plant, which is a bag filter, and that goes up and the rest will go up the stack, which will be monitored biannually for particulates.
I mean, the other part of the question is that, I mean, this is an on-demand production, isn't it? Small quantities. Somebody rings up and says, I need a little bit of, and they give a volume. And for the rest of the time, there's just some hot material waiting for an order in a sealed container, or maybe nothing, and they're waiting for an order to start the process running.
I would say so for this type of plant, then that would be how it would be used.
Okay, thanks. That's very helpful.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Abs. Then.
Yes, thank you, and good evening, Mr. Goddard. It's our annual, almost daily. Just let's go through some of the numbers, please, to do with the traffic. Now, you mentioned 2 comparable periods, and you essentially said that there was one more accident in the later period, and then qualified that as a low rise. It was 10% rise in accidents. Okay, so would you agree 10% rise in accidents is not actually that low?
Chairman, if my maths is correct, that is the case, but the initial numbers are very small, though.
Exactly. So the next part of the problem is, or my question is that we've just heard about this road that's used illegally, and some of us may remember as far back as 2019, 2020, when I think it was one of my first visits to this, and I said, why on earth aren't we sending all the traffic out through memory services? Yes, well, we can't do that. But what I am interested to know is, when we do the surveys, are we actually surveying what does use that road illegally? In other words, if the accidents are based off a whole bunch of illegal use, it's keeping it artificially low. If it does get closed like it should do, surely all those numbers are going to go through the roof. And that's without Walker Logistics coming on board, which we rejected, if everybody remembers, made a part of it on the lack of sustainability. We, in fact, didn't take Mr. Goddard's advice at the time about not approving that particular facility. So I don't want to repeat the same mistake, Mr. Goddard. So can you help me with the numbers, please?
None of the surveys have taken account of any of the traffic that illegally uses unauthorized use to the service area. So if National Highways decided we've had enough of this, we're going to close the gates, then yes, those figures in that committee report you could expect to be a little bit higher. I've no idea how much higher it would be, because I've no idea how many vehicles use that access onto the service station in an authorised manner.
And that lack of knowledge is a serious concern to me, because anecdotally, because members were there, and I don't know if anybody else was counting, there was one authorised vehicle and 18 unauthorised vehicles in the time we were standing there, which was a very short period of time. I was counting. So
sorry, could you run that past me again?
There was one highways maintenance vehicle that went by, which I assumed was authorised, and the rest of them weren't.
How many altogether?
18. I counted 18.
18. And how long were you there for?
Yeah, not long. It's a significant number, which is what worries me. Because if we do get our ducks in a row, maybe it's for the debate this, but I was hoping officers could, if you're not measuring it, it's difficult then to draw a conclusion based on what's in the report. Anyway, that's probably where I'll stop for now. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Abs. Right, I'm moving on to Councillor Foot. I think we're next on the list, and I've got several speakers after.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, my question, and I'm not sure, to be honest, who I can address this to, but the condition, or we're saying that this plant is going to be producing 25,000 tonnes of asphalt or material per year. And my question is that something we can condition, or is it something that we're not in a position at a planning committee to condition? Thanks.
I can confirm it's been conditioned. The capacity of the site has been conditioned to 25,000 tonnes per annum.
Thank you. So just for avoidance of any doubt, this plant cannot ever produce more than 25,000 tonnes per year.
If the plant wished to produce more than 25,000 tonnes per annum, it would need to submit a new planning application.
Okay, right, Councillor Dick. I think you're next on the list.
Thank you, Chairman. I think possibly Mr. Buckley, but he'll correct me if I'm incorrect. So one of the biggest concerns is environmental, is it not? I'm just reading from page 22. The site will operate under an environmental permit, which means the site will be closely regulated on its management, etc., etc. Can you just give us a flavour for everybody in the room? What does that look like, please?
I'm going to defer Councillor Dick to my colleague in environmental health.
He'll be delighted.
Yeah, roadstone coating is a prescribed process on the environmental permitting regs, and therefore requires an environmental permit in order to operate. Within this permit contains a series of conditions, legal conditions, which they have to comply with, and those conditions are basically to control dust and odour leaving the site, and they will be subjected to frequent inspections and have to submit.
Sorry to interrupt, but just to make it easier for you, give us a flavour of what has to happen. What you've said up until now, I've heard already. If I was running this site, what would I need to do on a daily basis to satisfy the permit?
You would have to have certain checks in place. You'd have to have logbooks in place. You would have maintenance records in place to make sure everything's being monitored. You would have daily assessments to do, which would be recorded and available for inspection at any time. That's the types of things you would have to have control of dust on the site. So, if you see dust being lifted, then you would have to look at water suppression and methods to control that dust, and that would all be recorded and would be inspected.
So one last thing, Chairman, if I may, would be inspected by whom and roughly how often?
It would be myself that I would be inspecting, because I issued the permit and I look after all the permits within West Berkshire Council. So I would be responsible for the site. So I would conduct inspections biannually to start with, and then depending on how good they are, that frequency reduces. If they show good compliance, then the frequency of inspection goes down, because they get rewarded for that. If they're good, then they get less regulatory control.
Thank you, Chairman. That's really helpful. Thank you.
You are on the next on the list, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just checking. Could I first of all ask a question about the existing facilities there are at Cricklade and at Thiel? Has there been any proper economic checking that there is actually demand for this in Membury in the first place? Because, as I said in my presentation, they are both of them are literally 20 minutes away.
As the site will be processing with the asphalt, about 30% of it will come from recycled pavement asphalt. So it's a waste recycling facility, and the applicant doesn't need to prove a need for that type of process to take place.
Can I dig a little bit deeper in that case? Because my understanding is that this material needs to be put down within 2 hours. So why would we need to have one 20 minutes in the middle of two others?
And once again, the need for it is for the applicant. If there was no...
Well, no, I don't think it is actually, because we are here trying to see whether there's actually a genuine need for this facility, given the concerns there are about the equine industry, which is the major industry in the valley, which employs over 1,000 people, not 5. So I think it does need justification.
Chairman, if I may, so it's established through case law that in this kind of context, there's not an onus on an applicant to demonstrate a need. In a way, the fact that an application has been submitted shows there is obviously a potential need. So I don't think we could sustain an objection on the basis of need. Ultimately, in terms of the principle of it, we look at our local plan policies and national policies, which obviously are referred to in the report.
Okay. Can I go to another point, Chairman? You certainly can. I did again raise the fact this is only, I think, producing 11% of the total capacity of this plant. And I again ask the question, does anybody ask the applicant just why they're only going for 11%? And can we realistically think that any planning application subsequently is not just going to be nodded through straight away because the plant's there, no impact, might be a bit on highways, but that's it.
Can I interject? No. Just answer that question about
I'm going to interject. I'm afraid it is my gift if it's something relevant. No, I'm going to turn to the officer first. If the officer are unable, I will be my gift if it's relevant and appropriate on this particular case.
Thank you, Chairman. The amount of asphalt to be produced is a matter for the applicant. It's not dictated to in any way by the authority. We would assess the amount of capacity that's been submitted to us, and in this instance, it has been conditioned, so it wouldn't be able to be exceeded without the submission of further planning permission.
I'm sorry.
And if the applicant is obviously in a better position to answer that question, that's within the chairman's gift to allow that to take place.
That wasn't my question. My question was, do you realistically think that if the applicant came in for another, I don't know, 20 or 30%, we reject it because the arguments would just be, it's here already, we're going to lose on appeal.
Well, every application will be judged on its own merits at the time, and obviously the impacts of that just increased capacity, as you put it, will be assessed, and the local roads will be assessed, and we'll go through the process again.
I think you've answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wollaston. Okay. Right. I've got Councillor Colson next on the list, and you've just put your hand up. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question for Mr. Davidson. We've heard a lot about the particulates and other potential escapes. What about smell? I'm interested in how much smell of bitumen or other things come out from these kind of plants, because I think the smell is the thing that would potentially drive the perception. If the plant smells, even if there's no harm, people will believe that there is. Thank you.
There are various control methods that can be used in order to minimise odour, which I've gone through before. Bitumen is enclosed in is closed in the silo. There's ground-based pumps for pumping the bitumen into the silo. Storage bins are enclosed. You can use low odour bitumens, and the plant can also produce warm mixed asphalt, which is produced at a lower temperature, which can produce lower emissions. So there are techniques available in order to reduce emissions. I would also say the plant at Thiel runs 200,000 tonnes, and we have no nuisance issues from that side.
Thank you.
Councillor Foot wanted to come back.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I do have a different question. Again, I think it's for Mr. Davidson. Mr. Turville, when he gave his representation, quoted that the Whitewall Quarry refusal was in part because it contravened the local authority's waste strategy, if I can remember that correctly. Just for clarification, could Mr. Davidson tell the committee if in his eyes, I think I know the answer to this, but in his eyes, this application does actually conform with all our waste strategies at West Berkshire. Thank you.
I might come on that one, Councillor Foot. Yeah, we can confirm that we have assessed the application against the policies in the Minerals and Waste Local Plan and have determined it to be compliant.
Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, it's been thinking about the answer about the licensing. So again, I think this is Mr. Davison. We've heard from objectors that the standard for racehorses, they think, should be higher than the normal standard that you test against for pollutants for humans. Is there any provision within law to do that? Or are we stuck with, or they stuck with, a test that really only assumes it's a sort of everyday human health rather than, you know, athletic horses, and particularly those that are in the stud, you know, the breeding side of it. So can we qualify the condition in a license to take that into account?
Short answer is no. We have no air quality standards for animals. We will have air quality standards for humans, and the environmental permit is based on that and has an emission limit for particulate matter.
Okay, Councillor Vickers. Okay, right, Councillor Hooker.
Thank you. And again, Mr. Davison, you're in the hot seat this evening, I must admit. Just a consideration, if this application was approved and considering the concern of this perceived discharge from this plant, you did mention that you would do a biannual survey of this discharge. For the benefit of the racehorse industry and give them a bit more confidence all is well, could that frequency be increased? And if so, by how much you're prepared to go out in the first instance until we get a reasonable result that all is well, and then maybe later on go back to biannual?
Short answer is no. The staff commission testing is done by the applicant and is done independently. So a specialist staff commission company will come in and will monitor the emissions over a standard production day according to certain industrial standards, and will produce a report basically showing what the emission limit, what the emissions were on that day, the requirement in the environmental permit, and from therefore is biannual.
Thank you. I must have misunderstood you. Understood what you said. I thought you said you did the monitoring.
No, it's done by a specialist company under certain standards that they have to meet for testing. They have to meet certain standards for testing and be competent.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Abbs, I think you wanted to.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a really quick one. Either Mr. Cardard or Mr. Davidson. Yeah, toss it between you if you like. Car emissions. So it's emissions and cars. So you can. That's why it's either of you. What has been the drop per car? We don't know how many cars are using the motorway, so that would be a nice number to know as well. But what is the drop in car emissions, but yeah, per emission from a car? Because we've gone from Cat 3, 4, 5. We're currently at what, Cat 5, Cat 6? Each of those is a drop in emissions. So where are we? How far are we down from where we were over the last 20 years? Choose your number.
Anticipation of your questions, Councillor Abbs, which is always interesting and challenging. A quick Google search. UK domestic transport emissions have decreased by 12% since 1990. Okay. I also have some road traffic data for you. On the M4 at Easton, so you're about 10 kilometres to the the east of here. And it goes back to 2000. So total daily average traffic along the M4 was 84,000 in 2000. And it peaked at 96,000 in 2017. And then, of course, it fell through the floor to 49,000 in 2020, for reasons we're all familiar with. But it's now creeping back up, and 2023 is the last level of data that we have, but it was back up to 84,000 then.
So no change really, it's just a drop in emissions and over.
So it would seem, but 2017, it was up to 96,000, but it is still recovering on the network.
Can I just add?
Yeah, but we'd also have electric vehicles starting to play a part as well.
And that accounts for something like 12% that you've in emissions since 1990.
Thank you very much.
Okay, members, are we in a stage of exhort?
Sorry, Chairman. I think Mr. Davidson wanted to make a comment as well, but
thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Right, just to add to what Paul said. I probably would agree that the emissions from cars have gone down, but the critical thing is HGVs. The use of HGVs is critical for air quality. So, and the use of, I haven't got the figures on, you've broken down the figures, but percentage HGVs, I don't know.
No, there's no data for HGVs in. Oh, actually, I do. No. HGVs 2000 was just over 9,000 vehicles. This is per day on average. And now it's nearly 10,000. I think, yeah, since COVID, we've noticed that for a time, car travel was down, but HGV traffic was up. And we think because of shopping trends, more deliveries and things like that was a big driver behind that.
No, I get that. But are we actually saying that HGVs have got dirtier then?
HGVs use diesel and diesel produce the particulates.
Well, I understand that they're still diesels, but I've got a diesel van and it uses AdBlue. It doesn't give any emissions anymore. So I'm confused about this kind of painting the diesel as the devil when technology advanced.
I've no further comments. Sorry, I've got no.
Okay, all right, thanks. We'll in debate then.
And from the chair on the back of that, Paul Collard, I presume where you mentioned about the numbers are up, but of course what's not considered is the actual tonnage, and it's probably there's a lot larger vehicles being taken along that stretch of the road than what was before. But anyway, that's for another day. Right, are we explored all avenues of questioning at this particular time? If we have, then who's the first member going to open the debate? Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, as I've tried to make clear, that I try and base my decisions on whatever numbers, facts that can be gleaned from these type of things. And well, the biggest fact that seems to have come out is that we really aren't measuring the traffic and therefore making our estimates based on what should be the situation, which is really what, in planning terms, what we need to be doing. We shouldn't be, oh, we happen to have traffic going down their way and that's helping us out at the moment. We really need to think about what highways might do and therefore what the situation really would be. And we know that the B4000 traffic incidents have gone up. It may only be 10%. One, because of the way we're measuring, etc., but they've definitely gone up. Walkers hasn't kicked in yet, and we know that is a significant addition to the traffic, you know, to raise. And here we have something that is actually outside of the boundary. You know, a boundary is a boundary, and we can always argue, well, if we just let that one next to the boundary, that'll be okay. We're only at a planning meeting the other week where We essentially went, oh, it's right next door, so we'll allow it. But the problem with allowing everything that's just outside a boundary to go forward is that we just carry on expanding that boundary. Might as well not have boundaries, because we're just saying anything that's there, it's okay to build next to it. So that's fine. I am a bit concerned about this whole business of a plant there, because I'm pretty damn sure I've sat at a committee before where we've walked onto that site and there was a plant that was then taken away. But something that is only down as 11% use, I'm afraid is a straightforward. I can't see the economic viability of buying a big plant and then only using it 10% of the time. There's something doesn't sound quite right there. But in planning terms, how I would reject on that, I have no idea. So I'll steer clear of that one. I don't see any economic benefit of 5 jobs in perception, but I do see clear advice from the officers that this is a non-sustainable location with its current traffic. We've had this comment from Mr. Goddard before. We didn't listen to him last time when we should have done. I'm going to be listening to him this time, I think, and taking that advice. In terms of the effect on the racing industry, it's as simple as what the previous appeal decision was. Unless it's been misrepresented to me, it was the potential, the perception. Well, the potential, we've discussed it enough tonight, the perception will be there. For me, I'm not worried about, people go, oh, well, why have they built it next to the M4? But as I think we've established, the actual emissions from motorways and so on are in decline. They're not on the rise. And even if the number of vehicles continues to rise, the amount of emissions from them isn't. It's falling, so it's neutral at best, if not falling. So I really don't. So I'm really worried about the industry that we will put almost definitely affect, because let's look at the numbers. The thing about far closer was mentioned, and 80 to 100 meters was the number that was given in the end. So if I use far as a doubler each time, I'm at about 400 meters. Which is equivalent to Ermine Street, which is 460 metres away. The breeder that came up is only 600 metres away. Kenwood Stud is only 700 metres away. We're not talking miles away, or even about a mile away. We're talking about half a mile away or less. So this perception, it may not affect the whole of the Lambourne area, but how many jobs will be lost at that breeder? How many jobs will be lost at just that one stud? I think it's at least likely to be as many that will be gained from having a plant in an area that just wasn't meant to have a plant because it's not designated for that, and where there's 2 others left and right of it that can easily supply the needs of Berkshire, West Berkshire, whichever way you look at it. I'll listen to the rest of the debate, but I'm struggling to understand why I would approve this in this form. So anyway, that's me.
Councillor Abbs, Councillor Dick was next on.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the officers for their detailed and helpful reports. My comments are a challenge to my fellow members to help us all focus on some things that I think are quite key. Firstly, we've heard a lot about perception. Now, some person's perception can be the reality, but should we be guided completely by perception? Shouldn't we be looking at real facts and making sure they're understood? I also worried about what happens if there's a future application. That's not our business today. We're looking at what's in front of us today. If you're saying, oh, well, future applications go through, then you're saying that we don't do our jobs properly, and I won't accept that. Not at all. Equally, I'm told that this plant would be an enhancement to the local area, and I'm not sure about that either. So I need convincing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dick, and I think Councillor Vickers, wasn't it?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, well, I also Googled the phrase which is going around in my head, perception is reality. And that was actually a political scientist that quoted that about 50 years ago, and we politicians know that. I mean, we may know the facts, we may know the truth, but look at what's happening in the world at the moment. Perception is reality. And when you've got an industry that is highly mobile, that is international, the reality we're hearing from the experts in the industry is that this could be a decisive factor in choosing whether or not to go to Lambourne, particularly when we've heard from our pollution expert, the man who will monitor the license, that he can only take into account average human health and not the health of athletic racehorses, let alone ones that are in a breeding condition where it is where they are most vulnerable. So we're back down to, can we control the capacity? Can we limit the amount of time that racing is controlled, that the asphalt production is controlled? And can we, as any brand would do, and let's face it, Valley of the Racehorse is a brand name in this industry. And if they believe they cannot manage the perception of that brand against their competition, then we in West Berkshire are going to lose one of the most important industries that we have. So, and we've got experience from an appeal that the very perception is regarded as a fact by an inspector. Now, I hear that there are other factors, that this wasn't part of the Minerals and Waste Plan, and I think planning committees tend to add as many reasons for refusal as they can when they refuse. And of course, the inspector has to comment on all of those reasons for refusal before he decides. So I'm not going to propose at this moment, but I began by thinking, yes, this is an ideal place for this type of asphalt plant. And I think if we can manage that perception, and it's up to the press, the racehorse industry's press, our public relations people, because it's very valuable to us. So the economic argument, I think, is very strong, not because of 5 jobs adding to the economics of it, but for the loss of any substantial amount of that industry, which I know for all sorts of things, including the rape harvest, is very open to loss of its customers.
Councillor Vickers. Councillor Foot, I think, was next on the list.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. I think a lot of what I was going to say has been said by Councillor Abbs and Councillor Vickers. Something that really strikes me is that in our update report, section under additional consultation responses, in the economic development argument, there is a paragraph that says, as stated by West Berkshire Council Environmental Health, the air quality assessment demonstrates that air quality impacts will be insignificant stroke negligible. Now, quite clearly, we're dealing with human beings here, and human beings physiologically are very different to racehorses. Racehorses are large animals, and they're exercised on the gallops, which are very close to this site, and their lung capacity is huge. And we heard from representatives of the industry the care to which they try and go to come harvest time. Particularly, we heard about the risks with oilseed rape. And that demonstrated to me the delicate balance that we have with this industry. And I think Councillor Vickers quite eloquently said that the economic harm, the potential economic harm to our area, even with the perception that there may be an increased risk to the health of the horses, is one that we need to take very seriously. And I think if I were going to object to this application, I would put one of the conditions that we cannot compare human health impacts from a respiratory point of view with that of racehorses that are being exercised. So I'm not particularly favoured to this application, I think. Thanks.
I won't draw you to a proposal at this stage. I was thinking you might have come to that conclusion, but perhaps we need to go around the table further. Right, Councillor Coulson.
Thank you, Chair. For me, the key fact in this debate is the 1,000 jobs in the racehorse industry that already exist versus the 5 jobs that might come or would come from this plant. At the last meeting of this committee, we approved 2 new state-of-the-art yards in Lambourne to show our support for this industry. If I were someone in the industry in Newmarket and this plant was approved, I would very certainly draw attention to owners and prospective owners the fact that this plant was right next to Lambourne and sow doubt in their mind. And I think this perception is very, very risky considering how big this industry is. And yeah, I started off thinking that we should follow officers' recommendations, but my view is now not. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Amithraj was next.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I will be trying to brief and I will not repeat what our colleagues have said. Just wanting to bring to the attention the questions I've asked, like the reports ask us to consider the job creation aspect, which is minuscule compared to the jobs going to be perceived to be affected. And also for this kind of application where there is impact on pollution or talk about, I would have expected this report to cover like a table, like the highways report is like, what's the pollutant, how much it's going to come up with, and what is that effect on equine or humans as well. So that is lacking. So to compare, I understand perception is not something we should rely on, but I also wanting to see that, okay, if there is a lack of data, that brings doubts, because the doubts are coming from the industry because of the lack of data. So that is something which we need to weigh really heavily, I would ask our colleagues, because it's not something which we could decide, say, there's a plant and 5 jobs created. Yeah, we could do that. But the context is really important, as our colleagues have said. Its context is, it is right in the middle of an industry which is renowned worldwide, and it brings a lot of reputation to our district. And also, I'm wanting to bring my attention to the question I also asked to the my agent, that there was no or lack of proper consultation. There's a lot of objections and supports, but what has stopped them from engaging with all those stakeholders who were objecting or having concerns, and that could have been mitigated. So that could have been addressed in this report, but there is again a lack of that's happening. So it's kind of creating an impression that we are looking at an application where there is an industry which provides 5 jobs, but there is a lot of unknowns, a lot of things which has not happened, which could have happened, consultations like that, or engagement with the community. And that is concerning to me. And I think that will weigh in my decision for this application in deciding how I would vote. But I will listen to others as well, and I will listen to the proposal. But that's what I wanted to bring it to our colleagues as well. That is a lack of consultation or lack of engagement as well.
Thanks very much for your perception at this particular stage. Right, Councillor Abson and Councillor Holker.
Yeah, I to be honest, Chairman, if it's okay, I think I've now heard enough of the debate to at least put forward a motion to unfortunately go against officers' advice and to reject this application on the following grounds. We have an appeal that has gone through that clearly stated that things that are, when a plan like this is next to an industry such as that we have in Lambourne, then the potential perception is enough to cause a support of this rejection at the appeal. So I'm comfortable from that perspective. However, furthermore, this is known to be a non-sustainable location, so I'm not going to support things that are in non-sustainable location. It's outside of the employment boundary, and there's another reason. So when aren't we out? What was the other reason? Oh yes, the traffic data that we have clearly shows a rise in accidents on the B4000, and that's without the next set
of lorries, etc., that are going to go down that way. So until such time as Highways Agency do allow traffic in and out of memory services, then I think we have solid reasons to say no. Sorry.
So
I'm saying, given those reasons, that's why I'd regrettably want to go against officers' advice in this case.
Okay. And I'm looking for a second. I know Councillor Hooker wished to speak, but I don't know whether you can hold back now. You'll speak first. Right, carry on.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, as always, members, we do get the most difficult and awkward planning applications before us, and it's always interesting listening to the debate. One gets a wet perception of where you're going, and then you listen to the debate and you change direction. You hear a bit more debate, and sometimes you change direction again. At the end of the day, we're sat here with our NPPF, we sat here with all our planning policies that we have formulated, we have drafted, and we have approved. And we make our decisions on planning applications through those policies. What concerns me is that on this application, we're making a decision on perceived, of which we don't have any data. Nothing has been submitted with regards to evidence of, I've got 25 ounces of this going in this direction, which there's no data with regards to what's detrimental to horses, let alone we know what it is to humans. But we're making this decision on this perceived. Now, I'm still listening to the debate, but just be careful. Just take that into consideration, that what you're placing your vote for. Is this our policies, or is this a perceived issue that we think is bad? But we've got no data to say that. Just a consideration before we go any further.
Okay, I think Councillor Dick was indicating before Councillor Coulson, but I think it's fair that I ought to take Councillor Dick first.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I am happy to second the motion from Councillor House for the reasons given.
So I'm going to turn to Bob Dre to identify what the conditions that you feel is appropriate to.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll clarify the proposal with Councillor Ebbs. So you've got 3 reasons. The first, essentially, the impact on the racehorse industry. Can I just clarify? Obviously, is that the perceived?
Well, I don't know. I'd basically like to. I'd like to start as the primary reason as an area identified as non-sustainable. So that would be the first reason for rejecting this, in line with Councillor Hooker's about what policies. Well, that clearly breaks policy. In terms of highways and traffic movements, I would like to reject based on doctor's writing. I can't read that, Councillor. So where was I? Yes, rejecting on highways matters, because I think we identified during the conversation, clarification from officers, there's a lot of data that if it was surveyed properly would lead to potentially a much worse situation in terms of those rough traffic numbers. And if we were to go to appeal with this, then we would have time to build that over. That would be my second point. And the third one was really this evidence that we were given that another similar scenario in similar distances, yes, in a different part of the country, but the same industry and the same type of plant, was rejected at appeal. Now, they used the words that's why it was rejected varied, but the words potential and perception were classed as important. The mere perception of effect on that industry. It's not my choice of policy words to use, but the appeal is something I'd like to kind of reference.
Okay, thank you. So first refusal reason on unsustainable location, having regard to the accessibility of the site and the lack of active travel options available.
Yep.
Second refusal reason, essentially insufficient information on traffic movements and impact, having particular regard to the unknown quantity about vehicles leaving via the motorway service station.
Yeah, I think before anybody does anything more out there, someone needs to go measure just how much that traffic,
not illegal, but the unauthorised traffic is actually using that. And then you can make a decision about whether or not you go to highways and have a debate it with them. But for now, we need a number, and we don't have it.
Thank you. And the final reason, recognising the sensitivity of the racehorse industry, the importance of it to the local economy, having regard to the appeal decision of a similar example elsewhere.
Yes.
The concern for the impact on the rural economy.
So as a balanced decision, that's why I fall on the side of refusing or not going with officer's advice.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm clear on the proposal.
Yeah. Does that meet your agreement? Councillor Hooker.
Yeah, I was just going to mention an officer's opinion on this. Membury is our identified industrial site in West Berkshire going forward, and I think in this local plan that's going forward. On the basis we're turning this down on highways issues, one might say that this site is not going to be used in future purely on highways ground as future industrial development, and where we're going to put it going forward. So,
Chairman, I agree. I don't agree with any of the highways reasons for refusal. I'm purely down on the economic ones and the precedent that there is a reason for refusal due to perception, because I don't think the data we've got on the traffic movements or on the accident is sufficient to refuse it, or even on sustainability, because actually the application, I think, improves overall sustainability because we've got an industry, i.e. the asphalt, the highways repair industry, that will have less distance to travel to the area immediately around where this application is, i.e. the west part of West Berkshire. They won't have to travel from junction 15 and they won't have to travel from junction 12. They can travel from Membury services, which I think is an advantage.
No, unfortunately, Councillor, they can't. They have to go by the back roads to go anywhere.
Can you just stop me? I've got other...
Sorry, Chairman, I just wanted to add the final reason for it's outside the employment area. The boundary thing. Thank you very much for Councillor.
Correct. It is. Yeah. I was going to make that point. Sorry, I feel Councillor Colston wished to come in before, and I was going to ask you specifically: was it actually in relationship to what's been proposed, or was it extra?
It was
comments.
I wanted to support what Councillor Vickers just said. I think this hinges on the perceived risk to the racehorse industry, and I know Councillor Hooker has said, well, it's a perception. I think, and it's not quantifiable, and that's the exact point. It's not quantifiable. It might prove to be nothing, but if that perception gets out in the industry in a negative way for Lambourn, we've done potential significant harm to one of our biggest industries. That's my major concern, and that came up in the inspection.
So, Chairman, may we reword that rather than mentioning the appeal, that the fact on because we do have policies about economic development, and if we see it negatively impacting, we should reference that rather than the appeal decision.
I think that, Chairman, if we were drafting that refusal reason along the lines of your proposal, we would premiere on the importance of the racehorse industry and the perceived impact in this particular case. The appeal decision is guiding you and having regard to it, but ultimately you've looked at what you've heard everything tonight, looked all the stuff, and you've looked at this.
So, but just to be clear, and for a clarification, Robbie, it doesn't matter which order we do them in the end. So it's not, that's our highest priority. It's just what we lead with, but we've got 4 reasons essentially. So.
Kevin, can I just make a comment about the 4th one? Sorry.
Of course, yeah.
As set out in the report, the principal development, we've assessed it against current policies. I appreciate it's outside the protected employment area, but it's been I don't know if Elise and Alice would have gone further, but it's clearly, in their opinion, complies with the policies for in that respect. So I think we would really struggle to defend that appeal. So I'm just going to raise at that. I think that's a risk.
Okay, I'll take your advice on that. Yeah.
Okay, right. Don't forget, I am actually taking comments on the motion and not something different. Right, Councillor Armstrong, I've got you, Councillor Foot, as well.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to comment on the motion proposal itself. I agree with Councillor Constant and Councillor Vickers, and we shouldn't be. I don't think Councillor App's proposal on the economic the traffic issues and then the aspects of the accidents and all those ones would matter. All I'm saying is we should be putting conditions if we are proceeding to approve, but if not, then they're not. At least the economic viability, that's 3.3 is the main thing, and it's like unperceived impact to the racing industry is the main concern. We've raised it, and I think we all agree, but we should be putting that in the right order. So I don't think Councillor Apps one sits well. Does
right? Okay. Sorry,
that's why I asked if the order was important. So it's not. And it's not. So
the order won't. No, that's not important. Can I just clarify, Councillor Abs, the fourth reason you are sticking to that? Just so
no. Well, I'm going with your advice to take that out.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Foot.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, my point is coming back to air quality, because I do feel that this is extremely unusual in this particular application, because we're talking about the racehorse industry, and not many parts of the country have a racehorse industry. And in my view, if we're using human data as metrics for air quality, I think it would be reasonable for us as a committee to say that we don't feel that that is a suitable metric to use to monitor air quality for these thoroughbred racehorses that are exercising. So it was really through you, Chair, to ask Bob if that might be an additional reason for refusal, that we could say that there were, adverse effects of air quality due to the unique nature of the racehorses.
Is that something?
If the proposer and seconder wish to add something along the lines of that, I would supplement your reason for refusal on the horse racing industry to say we consider there's insufficient information to demonstrate the proposal will not have an adverse impact on.
So even though we don't have a policy, we could do what Councillor Foot's just suggested.
As we've established with the appeal decision, it's clearly a material consideration. So you don't need to have a policy necessarily. Obviously, that would strengthen.
Stick it in there. Thank you very much. Yeah, stick it in there. So.
But I would support it in that one reason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, members. We now know what is included in the rejection proposal. So perhaps members would like to show their support for that motion, or obviously against. So all those in favour of rejection. Okay. Okay. Against. Abstain. Okay. Thank you very much. I think we've had a thorough debate on this particular application. We knew it would not be a quick one, and thanks very much for your indulgence and sitting through and listening to all the comments, members of the public. We've had 2.5 hours on this application, so I'm going to propose that we have a recess for a few minutes, and then obviously it will be an hour plus if we so wish to continue on to complete the second application. Okay. We now move on to the second part of the agenda, and we obviously move to item 4, which is application 24/02022/FUL, land adjacent to 123 Strong Grove Hill, Hungerford. Now, firstly, before I invite the case officer to present the case, can I just apologise to your good selves in the public gallery that we did have a comprehensive discussion on the earlier application, which of course has put us back 2.5 hours. So sorry about having to sit outside and wait for your application to be considered. Right, I now turn to, sorry. Right, okay. Can you settle down? Councillor Bennyworth is actually on the screen. Before I call upon Matthew, the case officer, did you got your hand up, Councillor Bennyworth?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm terribly sorry. I'm overseas at the moment, and it's very late, and I have a very early start in the morning. I have every intention to speak this evening. Would it be possible if I sent my members, my ward members' speech to Councillor Vickers, who can then read it out?
I'm sure members would be happy with that. And Councillor Vickers is happy to.
I'll put my fingers up when I receive the email. All right.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much. And I do apologise to members and to you, Chairman. I had every intention of speaking, but of course the first item ran on, and it's going to be too late for me to get any meaningful sleep. So if that's okay, I'll do just that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members, and have a good meeting.
Okay, right now, then we continue on and we move over to. Sorry, can we just have one meeting, please, members? I'm now going to call upon Matthew Shepherd to present his presentation. So over to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Chairman. So the site, as you've described, is land adjacent to 123 Strong Grove Hill. The proposal is the erection of a single detached 3-bedroom house and associated works. The reason it's come before you tonight is a ward member call-in by Councillor Bennyworth. The application has support of Hungerford Town Council and has garnered some local support, is the reasoning included. The recommendation from officers is for refusal as set out in the agenda report. Moving through to the location plan, the site is situated south of the A4. We can see that on the north at Strong Grove Hill. It's accessed from footpath, Hungerford 33-2. To the south is a site is the River Dun, and the Freeman's Marsh, a site of special scientific interest. The site is obviously located in the North Wessex Downs National Landscape, formerly AOMB. These areas benefit from the highest level of protection and must be conserved and enhanced through development. Proposed development would be laid out as per the site plan shown on the screen. The site plan indicates parking to the centre to serve 3 cars. Electric vehicle charging points are proposed. A green roof, so you can see the sedum roof cover. A rainwater catchment tank is included in this layout with sewage treatment plant. The development is proposed to be served by its own private water supply. The accommodation is proposed over 2 floors, as shown on the floor plans on the screen now and in the agenda pack. The next slide shows the design of the proposed dwelling, which has a traditional pitched roof with a central 2-storey gable to the front elevation, whilst the rear comprises a 2-storey flat roof section. A first floor balcony is proposed, which can be seen on the south and east elevations of the top 2 drawings. It's proposed to level the site to construct the house as shown in the sections. A 2-metre high acoustic fence and replacement is proposed along the boundary of the A4. Next slide shows an isometric drawing of the proposed development and impression. The proposed materials are described on the application form, but are white render with slate roof tiles, solar panel tiles, and grey windows. The flat roof section would be a green roof. Just heading through the images of the site. So we have the access here, which will be subject to improvements from a highways perspective. Our highways officers raised no objections. There'll be additions to the surfacing to ensure no migration of loose material into the A4. Showing you into just a couple of the site photos from last week that we saw. So this is the parking area looking onto the site. You see here the change in levels and the level of landscaping that exists on the site. To the left-hand side of that image is the site of scientific interest. We've the River Dun, and we've got the access there, and the proposed surfacing can be seen quite in detail. Moving down towards the other end of the site, so looking towards the access, again, just showing the change in levels and the level of landscaping which exists on the site. Photos from within the site, so we didn't actually walk into the site. I believe some councillors went when this application previously came to committee, but just showing you a little bit more of what's internally around the site. So it's proposed to clear the site for the majority of the landscaping, to construct the development, and retaining some of the landscaping as shown in the site plans. So turning to the report, it's probably best to draw your attention to some of the planning history. There are 2 historic applications that need to be considered into your decision tonight. It's important to note previous applications, the 2 dwellings, so the one shown as 2100185. So 2 dwellings was refused by the council and dismissed by the inspector, and concluded that residential development on the site was contrary to policy C1. The copy of the appeal decision is Appendix 1 for your review. He concluded that the group of houses south of the A4 Strong Grove Hill consists of a group of 7 dwellings, not 10 as required by policy. The other notable application is the previous application determined by planning committee, so 23-02586 FUL, which was a single dwelling and refused by the committee. The reasons for refusal are included and referenced in my report. In regard to consultations in the report, the Town Council supports the application, and there are 11 letters of support, 1 letter of objection. Another letter of objection is noted on the update sheet, but all the issues raised in that are similar to those that are included in the agenda pack. The agenda summarises the issues and the points raised in the letters of representation. In regard to the principle of development, the site is outside of settlement boundaries and in open countryside. Policies ADPP 1 and 5 would direct dwellings to settlements within West Berkshire. Policy C1 notes that where there may be exceptions to locating dwellings in the open countryside, such as limited infill development in clusters of 10 or more. As confirmed by the previous inspector, this is not a cluster of 10 or more dwellings, and therefore the application fails to meet the requirements of policy C1. The location of the dwelling therefore conflicts with our development plan and spatial strategies. So one of the another additional area of refusal is the design of the dwelling. In your officer's view, the proposed dwelling would be visually dominant within the area of Strong Grove Hill, given its size and proximity to the public right-of-way. The proposed dwelling has a traditional front elevation with a pitched roof and a central gable with windows. However, to the rear, the development comprises a large, bulky and cumbersome 2-storey roof element. The 2 design elements result in an incoherent mix of different forms, creating an odd and bulky dwelling. This is not considered high-quality design as required by CS14 of the development plan. The proposed development is taller than the previously considered dwelling refused under application 23-02586, as referenced earlier. The rear elevations and side elevations have no visual interest, little detailing, and no real articulation of design. The mix of traditional gable-fronted the gable front and the modern features of the flat roof result in a visual clash in your officer's opinion. The isometric drawings display how the proposed development would be viewed from the public right-of-way, looking towards the balcony and the frontage of the proposed dwelling. Here, the proposed development would be viewed as a tower rising above the public right-of-way. In addition, there is a lack of horizontal and vertical alignment and features and openings when viewing all elevations. It is considered that there would be a negative visual impact on the landscape. The additions of a dwelling to this site would be out of character with the surrounding natural and undeveloped character of the area. It would not add to the overall visual quality of the area, and we consider it would significantly harm the natural rural character and appearance of the area. The site will be levelled as per the sections as shown earlier, and mostly cleared of its current vegetation, adding to the degree of change and harm. The application includes a cycle shed adjacent to the prow and a prominent acoustic fence to the north on the valley slope. These features would be highly visible in the national landscape from the public right-of-way, adding to the domestic nature of the proposed development. The proposed development is not considered high-quality design as required by CS14 and does not ensure the character of the area is conserved and enhanced in accordance with CS19. The applicants have put forward that this should be considered as a house of exceptional design in accordance with paragraph 84 of the framework. This paragraph of the framework notes that houses in the countryside can be supported where the design is of exceptional quality in that it is truly outstanding, reflecting the highest standards in architecture and would help raise the standards of design more generally in rural areas, and would significantly enhance its immediate setting and be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. In brief, as covered in the report, the history of paragraph 84E was from an old piece of planning guidance, PPG 7, which contains an exception to the usual planning policy strictures against building new houses in the countryside. It was argued prior to this that large country houses, such as those of National Trust, would never receive permission today because officers would always view a negative view on housing in the countryside. The policy seeks to address this issue. This policy, it must be stated, is a very high bar, and very few dwellings are permitted under this policy, and most go to planning appeal. Given my previous comments in this presentation and those recorded in the report, officers are clear that this proposed development does not meet this high bar of exceptional design. The design is not truly outstanding and does not, in our view, significantly enhance the setting. Whilst exceptionality can be considered subjective, a way of peer review of our view is a design review panel, which can be instructed to provide an opinion on an application. These panels are made up of architects from across the South and give a wider scope than just an officer's opinion. They can contribute to what can be considered exceptional. It does come at a cost that is borne by the applicants. It provides a peer review of the design and is a forum to support exceptional design, but the applicants have declined to participate in the review panel due to cost. The applicants have advanced arguments that the proposed development includes many sustainable features and design points, such as solar panel tiles, and it's proposed that the house will meet passive house status. Unfortunately, no supporting modelling has been submitted to display that design can achieve passive house status. The provision of renewable energies is admirable and is encouraged, but is becoming commonplace in applications and is a policy requirement for development sites. The application does not give rise to issues of highways and improvements are proposed to the access and surfacing of the public right-of-way. The ecology officer is content with the application. The officers do not have any concerns in regard to neighbouring amenity. SUDS officers are attending tonight and are concerned that the application lacks the specific details of percolation testing being acceptable, and that the living roof, ceiling roof, is robust enough to cope with critical events alongside the soakaway. Moving to the key area of the planning balance, to summarise, the application, a new dwelling in the countryside outside the centre boundary, does not constitute a form of development which is permitted by C1 or by our spatial strategies. The development is not considered exceptional design as put forward by the application. There is a harmful impact due to the massing position on the plot and the mixture of design elements. The proposed development is not considered to be high quality design and has an impact on the immediate setting of the national landscape. The loss of landscaping and the domestic design features of, say, the cycle shed are also contributing factors to the harm to the national landscape. The applicant has indicated the design of the house will seek to use energy efficient fabric and renewable energy systems and aims to achieve passive house status. However, this has not been substantiated in terms of standards that it will meet, has not been fully demonstrated. Programs to model homes to passive house standards are available to which the applicant does not submit one. The council is seeing the use of fabric first approaches and renewable energies throughout the district, and their inclusion does not make this application stand out. Whilst the approach is admirable and encouraged, it is no longer unique, and a weight and the level of weight afforded to is reflected in my report. However, the council is unable to demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing sites due to the increase in housing requirements of the NPPF brought in December 2024. Because the council cannot just demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, the presumption in favour of sustainable development, as outlined in paragraph 11 of the NPPF, is engaged. That means for decisions such as this one, the presumption in favour of sustainable development can be applied in terms of approving development that proposals that accord to up-to-date development plans without delay, or where the policies which are important for determining the application are out of date, i.e. our spatial strategies are out of date due to a lack of 5-year housing land supplies. This means that the LPA should grant permission unless there are strong reasons for refusing permission in relation to areas protected by the framework. One of those areas is a national landscape, as covered in my report, or that any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the framework taken as a whole. Full wording of the tilted balance is included in my report for you to review. The harm identified by officers from the poor quality of the design is considered to significantly harm the scenic and landscape beauty of the national landscape. This provides a strong reason for refusing the development due to the high level of protection for national landscape, and therefore disapplying the tilted balance. Consequently, the presumption in favour of sustainable development does not justify granting planning permission for the proposal with the conflict with the local plan. This view is supported by recent similar applications for a new dwelling in the countryside determined by through appeal, which is included in Appendix 2 of your agenda pack. Whilst it is accepted the addition of one house would contribute to our housing land supply, and there would be social and economic benefits associated with provision of housing, and positive weight is given to sustainable credentials of the proposal. Given the small scale of the development, these benefits carry a moderate weight in the planning balance in our view. On the other hand, there would be significant harm arising from the site's location in the national landscape. The national landscape is given the highest level of protection and must be conserved and enhanced in accordance with planning and legal duties. Furthermore, the application lacks sufficient detail to show how surface water will be dealt with sustainably on the site, as explained in the report. The moderate benefits of the proposal do not outweigh these significant collective harms, and the proposal would conflict with the development plan when considered as a whole. Therefore, the conclusion is that the benefits of the application do not outweigh the great weight that's given to the protection of the national landscape. And as such, the application is recommended for refusal as per the agenda pack and refusal reasons. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Right, Paul Goddard, have you got any highways observations you wish to raise at this point?
Chairman, the Highway Authority is content with the proposal before you. I'm aware that it's being down for refusal, but we've no objection on highway grounds. The access as it adjoins the A4 is being resurfaced for a distance of 6 metres from the edge of carriageway, which we think is required, and the site layout is acceptable with regards to parking levels, turning, cycle storage. So no objection is raised, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, have we got Councillor James Cole or Councillor Gordon Montgomery on Zoom?
Thank you, Chairman. We do. They're just joining as a panelist now.
Hello, councillors, can you hear me? So, hello, Councillor Cole, can you hear me? No, he hasn't got he's on mute, isn't he?
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you now. Okay. Right, okay. Are you speaking on your own, or is your colleague joining forces?
We're going to speak together. I'll speak first and James will speak. after.
Right. Okay. Are you wishing to be told when we get to 4 minutes out of your 5 minutes?
If we get that far, I don't think we'll need that.
Okay. Right. Are you ready to commence?
Yes.
Okay. The time starts as soon as you start speaking.
My name is Gordon Montgomery, and I've been a Hungerford Town Councillor for the last year and sit on the Environment and Planning Committee. I'm not an expert on the detail of planning, rules and practice, but my observations are framed from my knowledge over the last 35 years living in the Hungerford area and working for many years in Hungerford. I'm passionate about maintaining and improving the character and quality of life in this parish. Against that background, and in respect of this application, what we are looking at is currently a very scruffy, unassuming, environmentally and ecologically unimportant piece of land, in my view, that adjoins existing housing and is right next to the A4. Furthermore, as the planning inspector has acknowledged, this site has previously, albeit some time ago, had buildings on it. The main logic that the planning inspector used for refusing the previous appeal was based on a contravention of the council's spatial strategy and settlement hierarchy, both of which, in my view, form important guidelines, but should not override common sense. The applicant has submitted an application to build an interesting and environmentally appropriate house on this land that will enhance the look of the land, not cause any harm, and bring economic benefits to Hungerford. There's no common sense reason for objecting to it.
It's easier to use one machine, Chairman. The feedback at the start wasn't good. Thank you, Gordon. I last spoke about this site at of July last year. I and the town were in favour of it then, and we remain in favour of it. I had hoped to be a little bit more technical about this, but when I came to actually work out what I wanted to say, I saw a document unavailable whenever I tried to access a document on the planning site. Planning officers choose to view West Berks policies as not favouring this application, but to use the few notes that I had made, scale, massing and appearance would not enhance its immediate setting and be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. I simply disagree. They propose to level the site. This house would not stand out. Any new build will, but given little time, this house will not stand out. The information submitted in the application fails to demonstrate the sustainability measures meet the highest standards for sustainable construction and energy reduction. As I said last time, the deal being proposed to the council is a combination of eco features which you're not going to see in general new builds, particularly if the Westminster government wants to build vast numbers of houses. It's the combination that I stressed then and I stress now. And that's what we want to see as an example for developers. Proposed dwelling is considered inappropriate in terms of the location, scale, and design in the context of the character of the area. No, don't think so. It would sit nicely at that end of the road. When you look at this application, it's not proposed to be an outlying house. It's an infill between a row of houses and the very nearby town of Hungerford. Not damage the countryside, quite unlike the large developments that West Berks has had to permit elsewhere and will have to do so again.
You're now on for 4 minutes, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. Planners choose to claim that this is not a brownfield site. It's certainly not the sort of site that one would wish to grow food on. The scrub on it is poor, and the site would actually benefit by redevelopment. On behalf of Hungerford Town Council, we ask you to permit this development. It's just common sense. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well within the 5 minutes, both of you. I'm going to look around the table to see if there's any questions from members. Yeah, Councillor Vickers.
Good evening, gents. Yes, you and I were both there last time, Councillor Cole. So my question to you is, what has changed since the last time? Put it in a nutshell, either in what you're seeing as an application or in what you're seeing in the report as evidence for refusal.
I'm seeing that the council planning officers have gone to great lengths to find every possible reason for refusal. But I still don't accept it. I thought then, and I think now, that this sort of thing is a benefit to the community. And I think we should, as a community, be looking for reasons to accept this sort of proposal, rather than find every possible thing that would knock it down. I have thought all along that this was a good site for a house. That piece of ground isn't good woodland. I'm a woodland owner. I like woodland. I plant trees. I wouldn't want to plant trees there. I wouldn't want to grow food there. It's a nasty piece of dump at the moment. Doing a redevelopment job, and I stress redevelopment job on that, actually makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Further questions? No further questions at the moment, councillors. Okay. Right, we're going to move on. We've got no objector, but we've got a supporter, Kamini Conin. Is that right? And you've got 5 minutes if you stand at the lectern, and we will commence the when you see the red light come on.
Okay.
Okay.
My name is Carmony Conning. I'm a neighbour at 128 Strongrove Hill. Our private lane is home to a thatched detached cottage and 4 terraced cottages. At the beginning of the lane is a messy scrub area, which is a tempting site for those seeking to dispose of white goods and debris. Perhaps if you had actually walked onto the site further on this last visit, you would have seen some of the debris which is there and which is regularly there and which we clear up. It is also, by the generosity of the applicant, provides an invaluable turning point for large vehicles accessing our homes, such as for the refuse collection. This turning point facility has been incorporated in the proposed design of the site, illustrating the owner's sense of responsibility to his neighbours. Similarly, the applicant has submitted plans for a dwelling in keeping with the terraced cottages, while at the same time incorporating the latest eco-friendly techniques, minimising any negative environmental impact on the site. Additional benefits to the existing properties would be the widening of the lane onto the A4, permitting improved and safer two-way access, together with proposed improvements to our rutted track. Concerns have been raised about construction lorries blocking the site, but there appears more than sufficient land on the proposed site for deliveries of construction material to be made on the site itself. While a footpath uses this lane to access routes across the marsh, there are already numerous delivery vans and vehicles accessing the lane to the cottages on a daily basis, and walkers appear to have no issues. Having attended the last planning meeting regarding this property, I feel the applicant is to be praised for having further considered points expressed at that meeting with the then officer in charge, The revised application has sited the dwelling at an increased distance from the lane, has reduced the size and the visual impact of the dwelling when viewed from the side. This application represents detailed attention to numerous issues, to expressed council concerns at various meetings, to environmental issues with regards to construction and sustainability at the site, to improved safer access to the lane. In short, the application results in an exceptional house which balances considerations of location, outward appearance in connection with properties that already exist, and the environment. It should be viewed as a showcase for what design and functionality in a specific site can achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions at all?
Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, please stand there just for a moment. No, there's no questions. Okay. Okay, right. Before we move on, from the chair, I'm going to refer to the council's constitution, part 3.10.8, and I'm going to ask you members if you feel it's appropriate to continue on to 10:30 to commit. If we feel we're going to complete business. Can I have a proposal? Yes, seconder. All those in favour? Okay. We will continue on. So we will now move to the agent, Brian Withers. Brian, if you can come to the lectern. I know you know the drill, so.
Good evening. The application before you this evening is for an exceptional home, it being not only in a sustainable location adjacent to the Hungerford settlement boundary and within walking distance of the town's facilities, including rail, it is also highly sustainable in its own right. West Berks Policy C1 may have been applied, but within paragraph 11D of the MPPF, as West Berks Council does not have enough sites in the 5-year housing land supply, the tilting balance is triggered. It says that the presumption in favour of sustainable development should be applied to grant permission unless the application of policies in the framework that protect areas or assets of particular importance provides strong reasons for refusing the development proposed. The MPPF heading of paragraph 11 says plans and decisions should apply a presumption in favour of sustainable development. The reasons for refusing, in our opinion, are overcome, as although it is in the area covered by the National Landscape, or AONB as it was, it does not have an adverse impact on it. National Landscape is quite clear that there will be some allowable development within it. A screening report on the application by the West Berks Development Manager recognises that the potential environment effects of the development are considerably insignificant in terms of the environmental impact assessment regulations. This is also found within Natural England's report, which consider that the proposed development will not damage or destroy the interests for which the site has been notified and have no objections. It is clearly not an isolated home in the countryside in the true meaning of the word isolated. The overall design is conservative and the area is screened within the national landscape. This is made clear within the design statement report provided to the planning portal. The impact on the national landscape will be low, given the screening from trees on the Hungerford Marsh. Therefore, the tilted balance should give strong weight to the planning decision. Throughout the NPPF, it uses the term sustainable 68 times, and this therefore has to be the key to future developments. The application, which has been carefully researched, puts together the latest energy-saving items using cutting-edge innovations. It will develop a home that surpasses anything that is being provided by current large home builders. The plan will build an energy-efficient home that will work towards Passive House standards and certification, as can be seen on the planning portal, and which confirms the applicant's commitment. I'd just like to say a few words on the design. The building footprint has been reduced and turned to give more space between the building and the PROW. The roof shape has been changed to remove the window dormers. The latter design change does also provide a better form for the solar slates, which will which will maximise energy collection from the south-facing roof. These slates will give the roof a natural look. Energy produced will be stored in batteries. All windows will be triple glazed and designed to meet Passive House design. The rear form of the building is protected from noise from the A4 by both the dense structure of the ICF build and the emplacement of internal non-habitable rooms on the inner north side. It's not visible from the rear, and it's not visible from the western side either. It's only the front and the western side and the eastern side that are visible. The placement of the insulated concrete format for the main structure will provide an airtight home without cold bridging. It will support a ventilation system of the latest design that incorporates an air source heat pump. And we do not find any comments from the West Sparks Conservation and Design Officer, so that leaves one to believe that department is content. The SUDS design shows the layout of sewage plants and surface water collection and storage. The positioning of all manholes and plant are shown on the general plan on the portal. This exceptional home fits within the locality, which has a 100-year history as part of Hungerford Town. It is a restrained design to also fit with the national landscape, gathering style from homes within the hamlet and the vernacular of Hungerford itself. Generally, Hungerford, an old town with a vibrant energy, sets an example by encouraging innovation. Encouragement from Hungerford Town Council has led the applicant to bring forward a conservative design which encompasses the latest in cutting-edge technology for energy-saving, carbon neutrality and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, questions for Brian? No? Okay. Yes, right, Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, just a little. Thank you very much for that presentation. Obviously, you are convinced, in your opinion, this is an exceptional home, but the officers don't think it's an exceptional home, and I'm a layman, so all I have is when I look at the picture. Is there anything you can offer me, to try and give me some help here? Because peer reviews are available, as I think were already mentioned. Is that not something? If you're just asking me what I think of it, then I've got an opinion. But yeah, I'm really looking for evidence.
I think the important thing is that this will be a passive house, and it's a format set by the Passive House Trust, which is an independent industry leading organisation that promotes the adoption of passive house in the UK. There are only 1,000 homes to passive house standard in the UK. West Berks, and in fact the whole of Berkshire and Wiltshire, do not have one within that number.
No, I'm actually a big believer in the passive house myself, except for the officers, again, have basically said there's no evidence. So what? I can ask them, but I'm asking you, what evidence, could you recap your evidence as to why it meets the passive house standards? So I'm clear.
Because when we start the build, the step one post is approval is to align with the passive house company and their building certifier and develop design, along with the BECO company that will be providing the formwork, who are passive house approved, and the mechanical ventilation with heat recovery company, Total Home Environment, they're passive house approved. So we will be producing a passive house, and we are committed to doing that.
So all of the suppliers are passive house?
Sorry?
All of your suppliers are passive house qualified?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's good.
Including the window people.
Okay, well, Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, it's a supplementary or a follow-up on that. So why do you think that our officers are not accepting what you say by, I haven't got the paragraph in front of me, but I believe that's the case? Or is it just that, I mean, I will ask them as well, but why do you think, because I've seen some correspondence from you, I think we've all probably had that, and it's probably on the file actually by now. But
mainly because we have a commitment to putting that house in, and we've had suggestions from the planning officer that we get an independent company that comes from the east of England or southeast. What he didn't say is how much that actually costs, and that for a one day of that group of people is £7,000. That comes out of my pocket or the applicant's pocket, and we can't recover it. You know, so our view really is that we're building a house that is highly, highly sustainable, and we believe that circumvents the problems that the planning officer probably sees. Does that help?
Okay. No further questions, members? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, now, Councillor Vickers is going to read out a statement from his fellow ward member. So you'll need to go to the lectern, Councillor Vickers. He's just getting out of the way.
Thank you very much. Yes, Chairman, members, this is reading out what Councillor Bennyworth would have said, and it won't take anywhere near 5 minutes, so I will add my own remarks as well. And I would say that Councillor Bennyworth, having called this in, it's just that he was the first off the mark. All three ward members are inclined to call it in simply because there has been so little objection and there is so much support, including from the town council, and we have to take that into account when we're considering whether we should call in. So, Councillor Bennyworth says, let's just scroll it up again. Oh, God. Right. Oh, God, here we go. Right. If one looks at the site map, no, sorry, beg your pardon. Having problem reading it this way. Normally I'd have printed it out, but at short notice I can't. Right, start again. Yeah, if one looks at the site map, this site rather resembles a toothy gapped primary school pupil in the school photograph. This plot is the missing tooth. As this application comes so soon off the back of the previous one, which also appeared before this committee, it's essential that we consider any material changes that have occurred since then. I would suggest that members consider the benefits of this being a self-build, one that can be built out quickly and provide immediate housing benefit to the district. It can be considered as more organic a development adjacent to the settlement boundary, even though it falls short of the infill requirement. From my point of view, Dennis says, the main overriding factor and material change since the last application is the fact that the council now does not have a 5-year housing supply, and therefore this development represents the least worst kind of development that the district would consider. Members should also consider the impact that this development would have on the environment, and I have to say that in my view, it would not be that conspicuous. This is a classic candidate for Western area planning, given the balanced nature of the application. And in this instance, I have to ask members, where is the harm? It has support from the town council, as you've already heard, and on fine balance, it has mine. I, as I've said at the beginning of the meeting, sort of represent the AONB. Now, there is no response from the AONB planning officer, but they very seldom respond. However, applicants can approach them, and I suppose case officers can approach them if they feel that that is the crucial argument. I myself personally don't see a great deal of harm, and I agree with a lot of what the supporters said. However, we have to look at a policy, and I can say little more to add to what Councillor Bennyworth has said. So I shall return to my seat and listen to what others have to say.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, any questions?
Well, no, because obviously the questions are on the other part of the speech. Okay, right. Once you return, Councillor Vickers, I'll ask members if they've got any questions of officers or comments or inquiries. Right. Okay, Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, I'm really listening to what Councillor Vickers just said there, and I have to ask Mr. Shepherd, is this finely balanced?
In my opinion, no. it's harmful to the OMB. I've shown the designs of the drawings. I think it's, in my opinion, the design is poor quality. That's been checked by team leaders, by DM managers. We've put this through into our report. We've got a previous inspector who agrees with our assessment in terms of the spatial strategies and the clusters and the requirements of our policy. We've clearly explained the tilted balance and why it doesn't apply in terms of the national landscape and the modest benefits. I think our report is quite clear, and it's a strong officer recommendation.
And from what you have heard presented to you, is there anything said about the passive house standard that's made you feel good about accepting those comments? And oh yes, maybe it will then. My issue, I am a believer in the passive house standard. So if we can get one, great.
So in terms of
convince me,
the passive house, it's something that we've given little weight to on the
little weight
to, because it's not in any of the documentation in terms of it will achieve this. Now I've spent a lot of time researching this to bring this before you. We've approved an application in West Berkshire, in West Woody, application reference 202606 FUL, which was for a passive house. Now, as part of that application, as you'll see on the screens, I can share some of the documentation. I won't share all of it because I'm not sure what is redacted or not, but this is the kind of information that we expect to see with the passive house. So we have the space heating and space cooling. We see numbers that can be attributed to it. If I pull you across on this bar here, we see how an application can be modeled to show that it's a passive house and it can meet those standards. We've got losses versus gains on this side. There are packages on passive house websites that allow for modeling of, and these are simple tools, well, not simple tools, I expect it's not, it's very technical, but are tools that can be utilized to show that it is a passive house. This is not something that we officers have a benefit of this application. We are concerned without this information, how do we know the windows are too large? They might let in too much heating, then the building overheats. Are they too small that they don't allow enough ventilation? That is what the modeling would help and assist us with. Yeah, and that's why we can't give any the weight to passive house status.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, please bear with me, just to extend this a bit. Let's assume that we put a condition on this, that they can't build until they've provided all of this evidence to you, that it is going to meet a passive house standard. Does that change the balanced or not balanced? Because it's not a fine balance, is it? You're dead against it. So
I would say we'd also recommend a condition on there that it be built in accordance with the approved plans. Now, if you take my scenario previously that the windows are too small, too big, or they have to be adjusted, or there isn't mechanical ventilation that allows solar panels or recovery of heat, we've approved a certain design, and if they can't build it within that design and passive house, then those two policies conflict. So that's why we have modelling before that submits to explain the situation, to say in principle that it can be a passive house, and that's what it's to achieve. So that's where a condition doesn't resolve this issue.
It would become an unreasonable condition to apply.
It could conflict with another condition on there. That's something that it couldn't adhere to.
All right. I thank you very much, Mr. Shepherd.
Any further questions? Right, Councillor.
Just pursuing that point. I'm not clear why such a condition could be deemed unreasonable. Could you just run us past that? Because that does sound like a solution.
In terms of that sort of condition, it's kind of stating something needs to comply with BREEAM Excellent, but there's a pre-assessment that you need to go through that is even going to be capable of meeting that. So, for instance, if there's not if the building's too large, the footprint's there, or the windows let in too much light, then it's too hot inside, you can't provide the ventilation. There may be a design here that conflicts and can never achieve passive house, which then makes the condition unreasonable. We've also got to bear in mind that we've got to approve a design in terms of the conditions listed. It's got to be constructed as presented to you tonight. If that can't then be constructed within that passive house, because we don't know whether it's possible or not, That's where those conflicts come from. It's asking them to achieve something that might not be able to achieve or might conflict with another condition on that decision.
Right. Not quite clear, because you do sometimes. Are we saying that in every case where we have this pre-am condition, there has to have been a pre-assessment? So if, for example, what the applicant said was going to cost him too much and he didn't, was that what you were asking for at the pre-application stage before determination? And
it's ultimately a matter of a condition has to pass certain tests, and this is about whether it's reasonable. Can it be complied with, and obviously adhere to the other conditions as Matt's described. Now, it's quite common, taking Brigham, for example, that we would, even though the detailed design stage is done post-permission, earlier on we would have a kind of what we called a pre-assessment, which does a high-level kind of demonstrates how it is capable of complying. That then gives us the confidence as to whether or not it's capable of complying based on the design put before us. So essentially the reason we're giving it little weight is we don't have that evidence to say we're comfortable that a condition could be imposed to secure this based on the design.
If I might add the example of visibility space, we could stipulate a level of visibility space that complies with our highways requirements, but that might not be something that can be achieved on a site, and therefore the condition becomes unreasonable. We need to assess and show that that visibility display can be displayed before conditioning something.
Okay. And if I may, just to be clear, even we're giving it limited weight on that basis. What we are saying too is, in terms of the exceptional design, which is a very high bar, I'm aware of only one being approved in the whole district at Frilsham Line Quarry. Passive House, whilst obviously a very laudable and welcome thing, it's been around for some time now. I'm sure I dealt with an application about 15 years ago for this, so it's no longer something of an exceptional design as well. That's just to complete that thread, that's where we're coming from.
Okay, Councillor Vickers. Right, Councillor Wollaston and then Councillor Colson.
Yeah, I think we're all quite sympathetic because to get a passive house. Is there not an instance here where if it's made absolutely clear to the applicant that unless they can achieve that, then there's a refusal, as we would do with a Section 106, for example?
I suppose the only thing I could recommend would be, if members are otherwise happy, is to delegate to officers to seek sufficient evidence that it can be designed to passive house standards. If we are satisfied that it can be, then we could approve. Failing that, we would refuse it. That would be one suggestion.
Chair, just having had a look, it's a pretty scrubby bit of land, and I personally would rather see it in some sort of viable use.
So I can only respond. I mean, that's a comment.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have phrased it as a question. I haven't got my head around that. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Colson, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, thank you. It was a similar point to what Councillor Wollaston has just said. It's classified technically as open countryside, but in reality, it doesn't seem like it really is open countryside. It's a little bit of land between between the A4 and this footpath. And as we've heard, it's got a lot of debris on it and those kind of things. I'm just, what's the definition of open countryside, please?
So it's the fact the spatial strategies, your local plan, area delivery plan document 1 and planning policy 5 directs development to settlement boundaries. We direct into Hungerford. There are exceptions to that, and they're listed in policy C1. So we look at development where they are amongst other dwellings, or they are for rural workers. So C1 requires development to be in clusters of 10. Now, officers are very proud of their track record with defending appeals on policy C1. There is one included in your document here. There is one, well, there's two here in terms of C1. Inspectors follow that policy. It's about keeping development into these clusters where it's considered acceptable. It is open countryside because of that factor, but these small areas do contribute. They are adjacent to public rights of way, and there may be an issue with then defending other applications where it may not be in accordance with policy C1 on that side of things. So there is a clear record, there's a clear indication from planning inspectors that C1 is applied in the way that we have here, and there's clearly two decisions that defend why this is an inappropriate site.
Adrian, sorry, perhaps you wanted to come back.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, because passive house is only one element of why, even if it was passive house, it still doesn't sound as though officer would have recommended it for approval, because it still hasn't demonstrated it to be a house of an exceptional design because of the mixed nature of the build. Have I understood that correctly?
It's the exceptional design is a high bar on there. So that's one element. We don't think it hits that element. We don't think it's, as an officer's opinion, we don't think it complies with CS 14 or 19. We don't believe this design is a high quality as required by CS 14. Has an impact. It's highly visible from the public right of way. It's in the national landscape, which should be protected and enhanced. So it's not even the high bar that it's not reaching, it's reaching the bar that the development plan policy sets for development in West Berkshire.
But if this had gone to peer review and had come back and architects had said, yes, so this is exceptional design, you would have accepted that, I take.
So what's set out is that we have an agent saying it's exceptional design. We have an officer who's saying it's not exceptional design. So then who do we go to? We go to a peer review. So we go to architects in the southeast from Oxfordshire. It's expensive, but that's what exceptional design attributes to. If they would then come back and advise us, this is pretty significant, Mr. Shepherd, this is pretty special, your council should be looking to approve this, then that's a material consideration we need to factor in. But that hasn't happened in this application, and officers have had to take a view, and that's the view presented to you.
I just want to make sure, so it's failing on multiple fronts for you, not just one.
Absolutely. There's the policy in terms of the spatial strategy, there's CS14 in terms of the quality of the design, there's CS19 in terms of the impact to the national landscape, and there's the lack of information and issues with sustainable drainage on the site as displayed.
It's too much.
Right, Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just checking. We're still in the process of asking questions.
Yeah, it sounds more like the debate. Yeah.
There's too much debate going on.
I'm also...
But I was going to ask a question.
So the question's going to draw to a close shortly.
Yes, sir. Short one. For the officer, if people read this report, it is crystal clear on a whole series of fronts why refusal is recommended. Question for the officer, has he heard anything this evening, albeit passionate, that changes his view in any way?
No, Councillor. This is a view consistent with your...
It's a yes or no answer. No is good. Thank you.
Okay, right. Further question, Councillor Hamthrost? No? Okay. Right. Well, I think we move into debate. Right. Councillor Vickers and then Councillor Hamthrost.
I just want to follow up on this open countryside issue. I know what the definition is in planning terms, but in plain English, there are some words in the officer's report which I just think are, frankly, an abuse of plain English. 615 talks about this remoteness. Well, it's not remote. I don't think anybody would say this is a remote site or part of that remote characteristics that we have in the downlands part of the AONB. I don't believe it's a particularly sensitive immediate area to this sort of change. And, you know, there are, I think, quite strong arguments in favour of it being a sustainable location. It's only 1 kilometre from a supermarket in one direction and from a very desirable countryside farm shop in the other. Via Freeman's March. It's a delightful walk. I've done it. I think the tilted balance is significant in this. The MPPF says that this is a brownfield site in the legal definition of land which is now or was occupied by a permanent structure. and policy decisions should promote effective use of land. Now, we've heard there's no effective use of land in agricultural or forestry terms from Councillor Cole. Has it really blended into the countryside, which is one of the exceptions? I mean, it's blended into a site for fly tipping by the sound of it from the residents. And it's no wonder to my mind that residents want to see this developed with a house. So we're back to the exceptional design. This is a small, medium builder for whom you have to accept that there is limits on opportunities to develop anywhere. They tend to go for these small brownfield sites, whether it's within a settlement or not. So I think we should put considerable weight on that, and that's what councillors are for, is to adjust the weight of the various factors here. So I'd put that to you, that it's a relatively sustainable location. Yes, it may be an open countryside in planning terms, but it's not remote, it's not sensitive, and it could be argued as enhancing a piece of brownfield land and making it back into effective use.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to take a few more speakers before hopefully somebody will come up with a proposal. Right, Councillor Farage.
Thank you, Chairman. I can come up with a proposal if you want me, but I'll just say a few points. I want to say I word for word agree with what Hungerford councillors, Mr. Cole and Mr. Montgomery said. This seems to be a waste piece of land. I will be very blunt because I don't want to mince words. It's not being used, it's derelict, it's been used for dumping, and neighbors have said it, so we've seen it. And what's the better way of using this land to build a house? An applicant has put forward to build a house for his home, I guess. And that is what we as councillors should support. If it is a big developer coming up with houses outside the settlement boundary, we've seen some similar applications. I won't quote the particular examples, but even if it overrules 8 or 10 power policies, we give due consideration because the economic weight or viability, but it's just an individual common folk, common manner, common man coming up with a proposal with the hand drawings, and we're just looking at one policy or a couple of them and saying like it's not sustainable. I don't understand at all why we shouldn't be supporting this kind of application. I know officers, with due respect to officers, they look at the policy and say it's not exceptional design. And that's the whole point. The exceptional design, coming up with that, comes at a cost, and applicant explain, and it will come up with a cost. And that cost is not acceptable for applicants like them, and we should be seen as supporting them. We can put some conditions. I'm not saying we should be giving them a blank check or a kind of do whatever you want. Put some conditions, but consider this application as favorably. I would only ask our fellow councillors not to reject again just on rules and come back again and say like, okay, this is, yeah, something like that. Okay. I'm happy to propose, but
well, I'll wait. I've got 2 more speakers at the moment. Right, Councillor Dick and then Councillor Hooker. Did you wish to come back as well? Sorry, did I miss you? Sorry.
You've spoken, yeah.
Okay, right.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I hear what's being said, and obviously when you hear the local councillors speak the way they do, then we need to take note of that, and I do. But I've looked, as we've been talking, I've looked again through what the officers have written, and it couldn't be clearer. These are professional people. They're relying on a decision which is it less than a year old, and once before it. They're reminding us about the settlement boundary. They're reminding us about the area 1B as was, and stood there with where the house behind, looking at that beautiful marsh. It's just unbelievable. So the only way around it would be to produce an exceptional design. Well, I looked at that and I thought, well, that's not exceptional at all. It's a blot on the landscape to me, but I don't know. So I'm looking to the officer to give us guidance. And we've heard what he said. We can't discount professional view. He's saying the bar is very, very high. And there is a way of demonstrating that you've met that, and they've chosen not to do that. Fees are Planners' fees are high. Everyone's fees are high. But, you know, if you're in it to win it in this situation against that history, you've got to demonstrate real quality. And they haven't. I agree with the fact that they haven't. And they haven't brought any evidence to prove it wrong. And finally, and you seem to be forgetting this as well, we're next to a marsh, the ecological information is lacking. It's been found wanting on page 86, paragraph 4, read that if you haven't. And I could go on with a list of things that are recommending refusal. So if you'd like a proposal, I'll make one if you want one.
Well, I'm keen because we've only got 10 minutes left, so we need to conclude before 10:30. So if you're proposing the officer's recommendation.
We accept the officer's recommendation as writ.
Okay, and that finds a seconder, does it? Okay. Does anybody wish to speak? Do you wish to speak at this moment?
Yeah, I was going to say. Right, I was going to say just before previous speaker there that we have here a strong recommendation of approval from the officer. I know design is. Sorry, a refusal from the officer, and I understand that design is subjective, but the applicant did have an opportunity here to take this to a review panel to get this assessed. It might have passed, it might not have done. Now, a part of an application is fees, and I know it's expensive, but you've got to run that course if you want that approval to move forward, and the applicant hasn't done that. So we've got no outstanding or exceptional design. This is outside the settlement boundary where the starting point is one of refusal. It's in the SSSI. It's against our spatial strategy. And there's 7 previous applications for similar dwelling or dwellings on this site, 3 of which have been to the inspector and refused. And with regards to the 5-year land supply, if the local plan had gone in on time, we would have had a 5-year land supply. But we are in the situation we are now, and this wouldn't have applied. But yeah, I'm happy to second this, and unfortunately, I'm very sympathetic with anybody who brings an application forward to this committee. I know the commitment, I know the time, I know the cost. But I come back to the issue that we make decisions on our policies and we make our decisions on the recommendation of our professional planning officers. So that's my contribution.
Okay. I've just gauged for advice if there's anything else we need to add to that particular proposal. Don't think there is. So unless any members wish to make any other comments, I'm going to put that particular motion to the vote. So all those in favour of the motion to reject this application, please show. Okay. 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, 6, 4 against. Okay, and 1 abstention. Okay. Thank you very much, members, and thanks very much for your attendance in the debate. Thanks very much for all the